Rain freckles Ashley's cheeks the same way tears do. She can't really tell where the sky stops and her crying starts. Right now, she is standing in a small cemetery in Birmingham, Alabama, 7 months pregnant, one hand cupped under her stomach like she's holding the whole world together. In front of her, a dark coffin waits above a rectangle of open red earth. Her mother is inside that box, her best friend, her only parent, her anchor. The church choir hums softly through Amazing Grace, voices rising and falling under gray clouds. Black umbrellas dot the crowd. Some folks sway with their eyes closed, some quietly wipe their faces. Every note seems to press down on Ashley's chest. She tightens her fingers on her belly. The baby shifts, a slow roll under her palm, as if responding to the sorrow in the air. The pastor's voice drifts over the sound of the hymn. We lay our dear sister to rest. His words blur for Ashley. All she really hears is the soft thud of dirt as a cemetery worker tests his shovel against the wet ground near the grave. Her throat burns. She stares at the coffin thinking, Mama, I'm here. I'm trying to be strong. I'm trying. A hand slides into her line of sight. Not to comfort, not to hold, to shove. White paper appears in front of her face, the corner already damp with rain. A low male voice, clipped and cool, cuts across the hymn. Sign this. Now. Ashley blinks, startled out of her grief. She drags her gaze away from the coffin and looks up. Hector stands beside her in a black suit, tall, clean-cut, looking like the model son-in-law to anyone watching from a distance. But there's no softness in his blue eyes today. No hint of the man who once promised to love her for better or worse. In his hand, a stack of legal papers in a clear sleeve, rain beating on the plastic. The bold word near the top pushes through the blur in her vision. Divorce. For a second, the choir, the pastor, the rain, everything falls away. All she hears is her own heartbeat roaring in her ears. Ashley's fingers twitch against her stomach. The baby nudges lightly, as if asking, What's happening, Mommy? Her voice scrapes out of her. Hector, what are you doing? It comes out thin, almost swallowed by the hymn. He doesn't look at her like a husband at a funeral. He looks at her like a man finishing paperwork. It's time, he mutters, jaw tight. Sign it. He pushes a pen into her free hand. Behind him, under a wide black umbrella, his parents stand close together. His mother's lips pull into something that isn't quite a smile, but isn't grief either. His father gives a firm nod, as if this was a decision they discussed and approved days ago. Just over Hector's shoulder, Ashley catches another face. Melanie, the CO worker, the one from the hardware store, who always laughed too hard at his jokes. Today she's in a dark coat, hair neat, expression painted with a thin layer of pity. But in her eyes there's a faint shine that doesn't match sympathy. Ashley's stomach drops. The late nights, the brushed-off questions, the trace of perfume that wasn't hers. Pieces that never felt like enough to confront suddenly lock into place. The choir keeps singing, through many dangers, toils and snares. Ashley's hand shakes around the pen. Rainwater slips from the end and splashes on the documents. She glances down. Words swim across the page. Dissolution of marriage, irreconcilable differences, uncontested. Each phrase feels like another shove toward a cliff. Her knees wobble. The ground feels soft under her heels, like the whole cemetery might open and swallow her next. A quiet murmur ripples through the crowd. Her Aunt May's voice falters in the middle of a note. A cousin turns his head, frowning. People can't hear everything, but they see enough. The papers in Hector's hand, the pen in Ashley's, the way her shoulders cave. Hector leans closer, lowering his voice so only she can hear, but the edge cuts clean. Go on. Don't drag this out. Sign it. Ashley stares at him, at the man who drove her here this morning, the man who slept next to her for years, the father of the child inside her. His face is hard, impatient, as if she is holding up a line at the bank instead of burying her mother. A cold gust pushes rain sideways under the tent. Drops splash across the top sheet, smearing the ink a little. Ashley's fingers are so numb she barely feels the pen. Her hand trembles over the line with her name printed neatly beneath it. Across the grave, Nia shifts closer to the front, confusion and concern written all over her face. The pastor pauses mid-sentence. eyes narrowing behind his glasses. A few church ladies whisper to one another, glancing between Ashley's pale face and Hector's rigid stance. Everyone isn't sure what's happening, but they know it isn't right. The baby kicks again, sharper this time. Ashley presses her palm to her stomach and steadies herself. The coffin in front of her seems to blur around the edges. Her husband is asking her to sign away her marriage at her mother's grave. Her mouth barely moves as she forces words past the lump in her throat. "If I sign, will you let me get through today in peace?" For a flicker of a moment, something crosses Hector's face. Doubt, maybe. It vanishes fast. "Yes," he says. "That's all I want." "That's all?" Ashley inhales slowly, air cold and wet in her lungs. The choir reaches the line, "'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far," and her eyes fill again. She lowers her gaze to the paper. The black line waits for her signature like a trap. Her hand shakes so hard the tip of the pen taps the page. Rain drums on the tent above. Dirt clinks against the side of the coffin as one of the workers shifts his shovel again. Somewhere behind her, a child whimpers and is hushed. Ashley presses the pen down. Stroke by stroke she writes her name, each letter feeling like it costs a piece of her chest. When she's done, she lifts the pen with a soft final scratch. She doesn't look at the papers again. She doesn't look at Hector. She shoves the folder back against his chest with more strength than she feels. For a heartbeat, he just stands there, staring at the signature. The choir sings, "And grace will lead me home." He swallows, turns away and walks back to the umbrella where his parents wait. His mother touches his sleeve, guiding him under the dry space, casting one quick, unreadable glance at Ashley. Melanie falls into step just behind them. They leave before the last shovel of dirt is thrown. Ashley stays rooted beside the grave, soaked through, one hand on her belly, the other hanging useless at her side. In a single rain-soaked moment, she has lost her mother, her marriage, and the man who promised to be her family. He just made her sign divorce papers at her own mother's funeral while she is carrying his child. That is where Ashley's story begins. Right now, Ashley is still standing in that rain. Her mother's coffin is settling into the ground. Her signed divorce papers are already in Hector's hands. Before we go any further, let me ask you something straight to your screen. Have you ever had life hit you from every direction at the same time? Have you ever tried to hold yourself together while everything you love is being pulled away from you? Not slowly, not gently, but all at once. Because that is exactly where Ashley is standing. Just rain, grief, and a signature she never should have been forced to give. Imagine losing your mother, the person who taught you how to walk, how to pray, how to survive. And at that same moment, the man you vowed your life to looks you in your eyes and says, "Sign." Now, he doesn't whisper comfort. He doesn't offer a hand. He doesn't shield her from the stares. He simply leaves her, publicly, while another woman watches from under an umbrella. Right now, Ashley isn't thinking about fairness. She isn't even thinking about Hector. She's thinking about one thing. How do I hold myself together for this child? Family members are watching her. Church members are whispering. The pastor pauses in confusion. Her best friend Nia is inching closer, ready to catch her if she falls. Ashley stands frozen between two awful options. Does she collapse and scream, or does she sign quietly and let her world break in silence? She chooses silence, but her heart is shattering loud enough for heaven to hear. Let's pause here for just one moment, because what comes next is where everything flips. Welcome back to Stories by Mr. Flex, where life's most powerful lessons come wrapped in unforgettable tales. If you're new to this family, thank you for joining us. Please hit the subscribe button because it helps us share stories like this on YouTube. Stories that remind us how quickly life can change, even when we least expect it. Now, let's step back into Ashley's reality, because while Hector is walking away in the rain, while Ashley is standing beside a fresh grave, something life-changing is on its way toward her. Something she has no clue about yet. Right now, Ashley is staring at the wet ground, trying not to fall apart. But here's the painful truth. Hector isn't just leaving her. He's leaving her in the cruelest way possible, publicly, at her mother's burial, with another woman waiting behind him. This isn't a quiet separation behind closed doors. This isn't a conversation after the funeral. This isn't even a moment of hesitation. This is a man walking away from his pregnant wife, in front of her family, her church, her community, at the lowest moment of her entire life. And he isn't alone. His parents stand behind him, nodding as though this is acceptable. His mother watches with an expression that should be compassion, but isn't. She is dry under her umbrella while Ashley is soaked to the bone. A few feet away, Melanie lingers beneath the same umbrella, trying to hide behind a mask of sympathy she doesn't actually feel. Her eyes follow Ashley, not with worry, but with something that confirms everything Ashley feared in the darkest corners of her heart. Everyone sees, everyone knows something terrible is happening. The pastor hesitates mid-prayer. Nia's eyes widen with anger and disbelief. The church ladies whisper behind gloved hands, shaking their heads. Her dignity is on the line, not because she did anything wrong, but because the man who vowed to protect her is treating her like an inconvenience. Her mother is being lowered into the earth, and Hector has chosen this moment to walk away, leaving her exposed in every sense of the word. This is the question sitting in her chest like a stone. Does she make a scene and break down in front of everyone? Or does she swallow her pain, stand still in the rain, and let the world collapse quietly? She grips her stomach. She blinks through rain and tears. Her breath shakes. Her dignity is fighting to stay intact. And while she has no idea yet, this moment, this humiliation, this heartbreak, this silence, is the last time Hector will ever hold the upper hand in her life. What he's doing is cruel. What she's enduring is unthinkable. But what's coming next will flip the ground beneath both of their feet. The rain is still falling. Ashley is still standing beside her mother's grave, holding her belly with one hand and holding herself together with the other. Hector thinks this is the end of her story. He walks away believing he has closed a chapter, wiped his hands clean and moved on. But what he doesn't know, what not a single person in that cemetery knows, is that life is about to turn in a direction none of them could ever imagine. While Ashley is staring at the ground, while her signature dries on those divorce papers, while her heart cracks under the weight of loss and betrayal, a new truth is already waiting for her. Quiet, unexpected, life-changing. The narrator leans in and speaks directly to the listener. What Hector doesn't know is that in less than 20 to 4 hours, the woman he just discarded will discover she's worth $500 million. Let that sink in. He divorced his pregnant wife at her mother's funeral, not knowing she had just become a $500 million heiress. He thought he was walking away from a burden. He was walking away from a blessing, from stability, from security, from a future that would have changed his life too, if he had treated her with even a shred of love or patience. The narrator continues. The man who treated her like she didn't matter is about to learn that he walked away from the biggest gift he ever had. And now the questions rise. Will Ashley ever forgive him once she learns the truth? Will Hector try to crawl back into her life when he realizes what he threw away? Will she take him back for the sake of their child? Or build a life so strong that he becomes nothing more than a painful lesson? Because here's the real twist. She's not just broken, she's rising. She's about to step into a reality that will change everything she thought she knew about her life and about herself. This is the moment where the audience understands one thing clearly. The tables are not just turning, they're flipping completely. Before we step into the full journey, before we show you how Ashley went from a heartbreak at a grave to becoming a $500 million heiress, please smash that like button, drop a comment for Ashley below, and subscribe to Stories by Mr. Flex. Your engagement helps YouTube push this story to more people who need this reminder that life can flip in your favor when you least expect it. Rain slicks the tops of the folding chairs. It soaks the hems of church dresses and trousers. It gathers in shallow pools around the temporary green mats laid across the Alabama mud. But the sky could be clear, the sun could be shining, and Ashley would still feel the same cold settling through her bones. She stands at the center of it all, 7 months pregnant, one hand braced under her stomach, the other wrapped around the damp funeral program bearing her mother's photo. The small, gentle smile Patty wore in that picture is a cruel contrast to the closed coffin resting above the ground now, ready to descend. The choir sings Amazing Grace under the canopy. Voices rise in soft harmony, bending with the wind. Some of the older women hum along, others dab their eyes with tissues. A couple of men stand with hats pressed respectfully to their chests. The atmosphere is soaked in mourning, soaked in memory, soaked in the weight of goodbye. Ashley stares at the coffin like if she looks hard enough, her mother might sit up and tell her everything will be okay. But the only movement she feels is the push of her baby shifting beneath her ribs, a small flutter that reminds her she is not alone even when she feels as if she is. Aunt May stands a few steps behind her, hands clasped together, whispering a prayer. Nia hovers to Ashley's right, tense and alert, her eyes scanning every face in the crowd. She's been glued to Ashley since that morning, refusing to leave her side even when Ashley insisted she didn't need to be watched. But she does, more than she knows, because while the final hymn drapes the air in sorrow, another presence edges closer. The sound of dress shoes on the slick mat barely registers over the choir, but Ashley senses the shift. The way people tilt their heads, the way murmurs die mid-whisper. She turns slightly and sees Hector, her husband, or the man who used to be her husband in every way that mattered. He looks polished, composed, untouched by the storm. His dark suit fits him perfectly, his hair smoothed back, his expression unreadable. If anyone in this cemetery tried to guess which couple here was in the middle of a marital fracture, no one would assume it was him. In his hand, protected inside a clear sleeve, is a stack of legal papers. The rain beads and runs down the plastic, gathering around the stapled corner. Ashley's throat closes. Not here, not today, not with her mother's body feet away. Hector steps closer, too close. He blocks a section of the canopy light, creating a shadow across her shoulder. His voice comes out low but firm, carrying enough edge to slice through the hymn. Sign this, now. She blinks slowly, as though she misheard him, as though the grief twisted sound waves into something that cannot possibly be real. What? She whispers. He thrusts the paper closer, the soft pop of the plastic sleeve crinkling under his grip. Rain dots Ashley's cheeks, or maybe they're tears. Her eyes drop to the bold words stamped near the top of the first sheet. Divorce. The rest of the letters beneath it blur. Irreconcilable differences. Separation agreement. Custody to be determined. She can't take in any of it. Her mind is stuck on the single word printed in unforgiving black ink. A gust of wind pushes water sideways. Ashley flinches as the cold hits her collarbone, soaking into the fabric of her dress. The baby shifts again, harder this time, as if reacting to the panic pulsing through her body. Behind Hector stand his parents. His mother's umbrella shields them from the rain, her face pinched into an expression that isn't sorrow and isn't kindness. His father folds his arms, jaw tight, giving the silent approval of someone who'd been discussing this moment long before today. And a few feet behind them, Melanie lingers. Her dark coat, her neatly pinned hair, the almost guilty but not really look in her eyes. It all clicks together for Ashley. She had suspected, she had hoped she was wrong. But seeing Melanie here, present at her mother's burial, watching this unfold like she belongs, Ashley feels a slow burn crawl up her spine. Nia steps forward, her eyebrows knitting together. She doesn't speak yet. She's too stunned by the audacity of what's happening. Aunt May takes a sharp breath, her lips parting as if to intervene, but she hesitates, unsure of what she's witnessing. Even the pastor pauses mid-prayer, his voice catching on a verse, eyes narrowing behind his glasses as he looks over. Ashley's world shrinks into a small, suffocating circle. Just her, Hector, and the papers. Hector, she manages, you can't be serious, not today. He shifts the sleeve impatiently. He doesn't look angry, he looks resolved. As if this is business, as if they're signing a loan document at the bank instead of standing at Patty's funeral. It's time, he says simply. Sign it so we can avoid dragging this out. Avoid dragging this out. As though the timing wasn't entirely in his control, Ashley's hand trembles as he presses the pen into her palm. The metal feels cold, too heavy for its size. The wedding band on her finger gleams faintly under the gray sky. A drop of rain splashes on the top sheet, smudging a corner of the text. Her vision swims. She tries to steady her breath, but each inhale feels sharp, uneven. Please, she whispers, not sure if she's talking to Hector or to God. Her eyes drift to the coffin again. Her mother's homegoing should be the only thing that matters today, the only heartbreak she should be trying to survive. Patty deserved a daughter standing strong at her burial, not buckling under a blow from a man who vowed to stand by her. But Hector doesn't seem moved. He doesn't soften. He doesn't lower his voice or step aside or comfort her. "Ashley," he says, "don't make this harder. Sign." A tremor runs through her. Her gaze slips to the crowd. Face is blurred by the rain, by distance, by humiliation, some with that look only church folks have when scandal touches holy ground. The choir continues singing because they don't know what else to do. The notes fight the tension, filling the air with a hymn Ashley can't absorb anymore. Her knees weaken. She feels the wobble in them, the way her weight shifts dangerously. The baby rolls beneath her ribs, reminding her she cannot collapse here. Not now. Not with her daughter, depending on the steadiness of her heartbeat. She tightens her hold on her stomach. She straightens her spine. She forces her trembling to still just enough. "If I sign," she murmurs, "will you let me get through this day in peace?" For a moment, just one, Hector's expression flickers. Not with regret, not with guilt. Something closer to discomfort, like her sorrow is an inconvenience he doesn't want to deal with. "Yes," he says, "that's all I want." Ashley knows that isn't true. He wants freedom. He wants Melanie. She lowers her gaze to the paper. Her hand shakes violently as she positions the pen over the signature line. The wind cuts colder. The cemetery seems to tilt. Her breath catches in her throat like something sharp. But she signs. Letter by letter she writes her own name, her handwriting trembling under the weight of betrayal. With each stroke, something inside her breaks a little more, a piece she can't easily put back. When she finishes, she lifts the pen and hands the papers back to Hector without lifting her eyes. He takes them. He doesn't thank her. He doesn't look back at the coffin. He doesn't say anything. He turns and walks away. They leave the cemetery before the final shovel of dirt hits the coffin. The rain splashes onto the overturned program. Her stomach tightens, then softens. The baby nudges gently, as if sensing her pain. She sags forward, barely catching herself. Her vision dims for a second, the edges of the world darkening. Nia rushes toward her, but Ashley steadies herself with sheer will. She whispers, barely audible, her hand on her belly. "We're going to survive this, baby. I promise you. We'll survive." Her body sways again, and she grips the side of a chair for balance. The coffin begins its slow descent into the ground, the ropes creaking softly. Aunt May cries openly now, but Ashley stands. Barely, but she stands. Her world is just broken in front of everyone. Yet something inside her, small but alive, refuses to die with it. Before we continue Ashley's journey, please take a moment to like this video, share your thoughts for her in the comments below, and subscribe to Stories by Mr. Flex. Your support helps us bring real, powerful stories to more people who need them. The rain has slowed to a mist by the time the final amen echoes through the cemetery. People begin drifting back toward their cars, slowly, quietly, unsure what to say after witnessing something so raw. It felt almost like trespassing. Ashley remains rooted to the same spot, her dress clinging to her legs, her curls damp, her fingers trembling despite her attempts to wipe the rain from her face. The casket is now fully lowered. The green canopy trembles lightly in the wind. The crowd around her is thinned, but those who remain feel like a protective wall. Nia, Aunt May, a couple of cousins, 2 older church mothers. They hover, creating a respectful but intentional circle. None of them rush her, but none of them leave either. Ashley doesn't speak. She barely breathes. It feels like her mother has been taken twice, once by illness and once by the shattering of Ashley's own life beside the grave. Nia stands closest, watching her friend with eyes that burn with both grief and fury. She gently places a hand on Ashley's back. "Let's go inside, Ash," she murmurs. "You need to sit down. You're soaked." Ashley tries to step forward, but her knees buckle again. Nia catches her elbow quickly, steadying her before she falls. Ashley's free hand rests instinctively on her stomach, the baby turning again under the pressure of her stress. "You're okay," Nia whispers. "Lean on me. It's all right." Ashley nods faintly, not because she feels okay. She doesn't. But because she trusts Nia, and trust is rare today. Aunt May steps around to face her, her voice low and sympathetic. "Baby, come back to the hall with us. You don't need to stand out here no more." Ashley lifts her gaze. Through her blurry vision, she sees the freshly turned soil being shoveled onto the casket. It hits her with a thud inside her chest. Her mother is gone, truly gone, and the last person who should have protected her in this moment just walked away without looking back. She exhales shakily and nods. Okay. The group forms a quiet escort around her as they make their way across the wet grass toward the church's fellowship hall. Ashley's steps are slow but steady. Nia stays pressed close, holding her arm like something precious that might slip. Inside the hall, warm light replaces the cold gray of the cemetery. The smell of collard greens, fried chicken, and peach cobbler fills the space. Long tables are covered in white cloths with dishes brought by church members, comfort food meant to soothe the grieving. But nothing can soothe Ashley today. Not yet. Voices hush the moment she enters. She feels the shift in the air, sympathy, shock, anger, curiosity. People don't mean to stare, but they do. Not at her dress or her face, but at her strength holding her upright when everyone watched her husband break her spirit beside a coffin. Ashley avoids eye contact, heading straight toward a small round table in the corner. Nia guides her into a chair and immediately drapes her own sweater over Ashley's shoulders to warm her. A cousin, Tasha, approaches with a plate. Eat something, Ash, she urges softly. Please. Ashley looks at the food, macaroni, chicken, cornbread, but her stomach churns. She pushes the plate gently away. I can't right now. Tasha nods, understanding. She squeezes Ashley's shoulder before stepping aside. Nearby, a group of church ladies whisper among themselves, discreetly, but not discreet enough. Lord have mercy. Never seen anything like that at a burial. He did that child so wrong. And she pregnant too. Shameful. Another voice cuts sharper. God don't sleep. He gon' handle him. Ashley closes her eyes. Their voices aren't directed at her, but each one lands like a fresh weight on her chest. She doesn't want pity. She doesn't want gossip. She just wants her mother. She presses a hand to her forehead, trying to breathe through the heaviness. Nia sits beside her, arms crossed protectively. Anyone who even looks like they might approach with the wrong tone earns a glare from her. Don't worry about them, she whispers. People talk when they don't know what else to do. Ashley swallows hard. I don't want to be the topic today. You're not, Nia insists. Your mom is. You did nothing wrong, but shame still crawls beneath Ashley's skin. It's irrational, she knows that, but humiliation works its way inside the bones, hiding behind the ribs, refusing to let go. Aunt May sits across from her, her eyes soft. Ashley, baby, what happened out there, that ain't your burden. It's his. That man gon' have to answer for the way he carried himself. Not you. Ashley hears the words but can't absorb them. Her mind keeps replaying that moment. Hector's cold expression, the pen in her hand, the paper shaking under her fingers, Melanie watching like she already belonged beside him. Nia places her hand on Ashley's. Talk to me, Ash. What's going on in your head? Ashley draws a shaky breath. Everything feels like it broke at once. My mom, Hector, people watching. Nia's jaw tightens. Forget people. They didn't have to sign anything. They didn't get blindsided. You're the one hurting, and that's what matters. Ashley tries to speak but stops. The words stay trapped, too heavy to push through. Another cousin approaches, looking uncomfortable. Ash, I'm so sorry. Do you need anything? Water? A ride? Want me to run to the store? She shakes her head. Thank you. I'm okay. They leave her alone then, sensing she can't handle more conversation. Minutes pass, maybe an hour. Time folds strangely when grief and humiliation overlap. Ashley feels the fatigue settling deeper into her limbs. Her back aches, her feet throb. The baby shifts again, making her wince. She rubs her stomach lightly. I'm sorry, little one, she whispers. I know this is a lot. Nia hears her and gently rubs her back. The baby's fine. You're doing your best. Ashley nods, even though she doubts every part of herself right now. The repast continues with quiet murmurs and the clinking of forks against plates. Children run quietly in the far corner. Someone's phone rings and is hurriedly silenced. The normal sounds of a funeral meal fill the room, but Ashley feels disconnected from it all. Eventually, Nia leans close. Let's go home. You need rest. Ashley exhales as though the suggestion lifts a weight. Yeah, let's go. Aunt May joins them. I'll help pack up her flowers, she says softly. I'll drop them at the house. Ashley gives a faint nod of thanks. She cannot process any more decisions. Nia helps her stand. As Ashley rises, several eyes drift toward her again, some full of love, some full of shock at the cruelty they witnessed. She tries to ignore all of it. Outside, the sky is shifted to an overcast calm. The mist clings to her skin as she and Nia walk toward the car parked along the curb. As soon as she settles into the passenger seat, the fatigue collapses onto her entire body. Nia buckles her in, closes the door gently, and circles around to the driver's side. The drive to Patty's house is short. Familiar streets pass by, storefronts Ashley has known since childhood, porches where neighbors waved on Sunday mornings. But today, everything looks dimmer, less alive. They reach the house, a small warm home full of memories Ashley isn't ready to face. Nia parks and opens Ashley's door. Come on, let's get you inside. Ashley steps out slowly. Her body feels heavy, sluggish, like she's walking underwater. The driveway is wet, the flowers in her mother's front yard drooping under the weight of the rain. Inside, the house carries Patty's scent, lavender lotion and something sweet, like the peach cobbler she used to bake. The air feels warm, but it hits Ashley like a cold wave of reality. Nia closes the door behind them. Let's get you changed, she says gently. Ashley nods without speaking. The two women move down the hallway to Ashley's childhood bedroom. The door is partially open, showing the room just as Patty kept it. Soft blankets folded neatly, framed childhood photos on the shelf, a half-finished crochet piece on the nightstand that Patty had worked on during her treatments. Ashley's breath catches. I can't even look at her things right now. Nia touches her arm. You don't have to. Just breathe. Ashley sits on the edge of the bed. Nia kneels in front of her, helping her remove her soaked shoes. Ashley lifts her arms weakly so Nia can slide off the wet dress and replace it with a soft cotton nightgown. You're freezing, Nia says, rubbing her arms briskly. Lie down for a bit. Ashley does. Her head sinks into the pillow. Tears slip sideways across her cheeks. She tries to stop them, but they come anyway. Nia sits beside her, running a hand gently over her shoulder. Let it out, Ash. You held everything in at the cemetery. You don't have to do that now. Ashley turns her face into the pillow. She sobs hard, deep shaking cries she couldn't release earlier. Her shoulders tremble. Her breath breaks. She clutches the pillow as though it might anchor her to something steady. He left me, she chokes out. Right there, in front of everybody. At my mom's funeral. I know, Nia whispers. I know, baby, and it wasn't your fault. Ashley's hand drifts to her stomach. How am I supposed to raise her alone? How am I supposed to do any of this without Mom? Nia strokes her back, one day at a time. And you're not alone. You have me. You have your family. You have a whole community that loves you. Ashley sniffs, wiping her face. I don't feel strong. Strength isn't the absence of pain, Nia replies. It's what you do after the pain hits. Ashley breathes, shaky but steadying. Her tears slow. After a while, she sits up slowly, pressing her hand to her belly. The baby kicks softly, a reminder, a grounding force. Ashley looks at herself in the mirror beside the bed. Her eyes are swollen, her hair is damp, her expression is tired, aching, hollow. But beneath all that, something faint, something small and stubborn, glimmers. She lifts her chin a little. She studies her reflection, and then she whispers to herself and to her unborn daughter, We're going to be all right. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to protect myself. No matter what. It isn't confidence. Not yet. But it's a vow. The kind her mother would have wanted her to make. Later that night, after Nia falls asleep on the couch, Ashley moves quietly to the bathroom. She splashes cool water on her face and stands before the mirror again. The house is quiet. The only sound the hum of the air vent and the faint rustle of wind outside. Ashley holds her stomach. This is the worst day of our lives, she whispers to her baby. But it won't be the last chapter. She closes her eyes, she breathes, and in a single moment of clarity, she feels the shift inside her, not toward healing yet, but toward readiness, to face whatever comes next. A soft knock sounds at the doorframe. Aunt May peeks in. Baby, when you're ready, we need to talk about what brought that man to act like that today. Ashley turns slowly. Her face is calm but tired. Aunt May steps closer, sits on the edge of the bed and folds her hands. Because to understand how all of this broke apart, we have to go back to where it started. Ashley nods once quietly. She is finally ready to look back. The night before had been brutal, and the morning after sits heavy over Birmingham like a thick blanket of silence. Ashley wakes with swollen eyes and a mind full of fractured pieces. But she also wakes with resolve, quiet, fragile, but real. She sits on the porch steps, wrapped in a thin blanket, watching the sun rise over the neighborhood she grew up in. Dew glistens on the grass. A dog barks 2 houses down. Somewhere a lawn sprinkler ticks rhythmically. These familiar sounds ground her, but Aunt May's voice from the night before keeps echoing. To understand why this man chose this day to break your heart, we have to go back, and going back means returning to the beginning. Back to when everything felt simple, hopeful, and possible. Back to when Ashley Green and Hector Whitman were just 2 strangers whose paths weren't supposed to cross. Back to when yes felt like destiny. Before love complicated her life, Ashley lived in Birmingham with a schedule as predictable as the sunrise. Weekdays meant working her way up in marketing, grabbing early buses, sipping cheap coffee, wearing thrifted blazers her mother helped tailor. Weekends belonged to church, cookouts, and family noise. Sunday mornings especially were a cornerstone of life. Ashley grew up in a black church where music wasn't just sound, it was spirit. The choir didn't sing, they lifted the room. Elders' amens threaded through the air like heartbeat. Children fidgeted in their pressed clothes while ushers fanned themselves with cardboard funeral home fans. Ashley loved it. She loved the fullness of it all, the warmth, the laughter, the feeling that no matter how difficult the week had been, she belonged to something bigger. Her mother Patty raised her alone, not because she wanted to, but because life had forced her into the role. She worked double shifts at a medical office, cooked dinner almost every night, and still somehow found time to give Ashley the attention of 3 parents. "Baby, you don't have to have everything," Patty always told her. "You just need a strong foundation and faith." Ashley blossomed under that foundation. She wasn't wealthy, but she was deeply loved, and that love molded her into someone soft and determined at the same time. She carried that mix into adulthood, warm smile, sharp mind, and a heart that still believed in possibility. She never knew that possibility would come from Montgomery. Hector Whitman grew up in a world where everyone looked the same and thought the same, a quiet suburb outside Montgomery, a tight-knit Methodist congregation, and a family-run hardware store that had been around for generations. His mother ran the household with a firm smile. His father managed the store with tired pride. Expectations were simple: follow tradition, don't embarrass the family, keep your life respectable. Hector tried to fit the mold, but even in childhood, he often felt out of place, not rebellious, just uncertain he wanted the same slow, structured life everyone around him accepted. He helped in the store after school, learned to fish on fall mornings, attended neighborhood events because attendance was mandatory. He grew up polite, observant, and reserved. His world was small but orderly. But as he got older, that order felt like a cage. He wanted more, something different, something that felt like his own. He wasn't looking for love at all, which is probably why love found him. It was a warm Friday morning when Ashley arrived at a professional conference in Mobile. Her company sent her to represent the marketing team. She wore her best blazer, carried a stack of brochures, and rehearsed her introduction lines in her head. She wasn't nervous, she was prepared. Hector arrived at the same event an hour later, sent by his parents to learn modern strategies for the hardware business. He didn't want to be there, but he came anyway. Sometimes appeasing expectations was easier than arguing them. The conference hall buzzed with small talk, business cards exchanging hands, presentations starting in breakout rooms. Air conditioning hummed overhead. Ashley stood at the registration table, signing her name, when someone bumped her shoulder. Her brochures slipped from her hands and scattered across the floor like confetti. "Oh shoot, sorry," she gasped, bending quickly. No, that was my fault. I didn't see you there," a male voice replied. They both kneeled to gather the papers at the same time, their foreheads nearly bumping. Ashley looked up, Hector looked up, and for a moment everything paused, like the universe held its breath. Ashley blinked at the tall man with sandy brown hair and a slightly nervous half-smile. His drawl wasn't too thick, but enough to soften the edges of his words. Hector stared into warm brown eyes, wondering how someone could look startled and composed at the same time. They both reached for the same brochure, their fingers brushing. "Sorry," they said in unison. They laughed, the ice, Thin, accidental, unexpected, broke. Later, during a mid-morning break, Ashley stood in line for coffee. When she turned around, Hector was behind her again. "You stalking me?" she teased lightly. "Maybe," he said, then blushed. No, this is the only coffee line." Ashley laughed again. Hector felt himself relax more than he had all month. They grabbed their cups and found themselves talking at a standing table. What started as polite conversation dissolved easily into genuine discussion. "Birmingham, huh?" Hector asked. "I've only been there a few times. Heard the food is amazing." "It is," Ashley replied proudly. "And the people. And the music. And the culture. I love my city." Hector nodded. "Montgomery is quieter." Ashley tilted her head. "Do you like quiet?" He thought about it. "Sometimes. Other times it feels like my life is already planned out for me." Ashley sipped her coffee slowly. "You ever think about changing the plan?" He exhaled. "More often than I admit." Ashley didn't push. She just held his gaze with the kind of listening that made a person want to tell the truth. Hector felt seen, and it was a new feeling. At lunch, Ashley found a seat near the back of the banquet hall. She didn't expect company, but Hector approached with the same unsure smile. "Is this seat taken?" "No," she said, surprised. "Sit." They talked through the entire meal. About work, about family, about what they wanted in life. Ashley shared stories about her mom, how Patty sacrificed for her, how they were close, how she wanted to make her proud. Hector shared stories about the hardware store, how he felt responsible for keeping it afloat, even though part of him wanted something different. Ashley found him thoughtful, kind, and surprisingly funny when he loosened up. Hector found her warm, sharp-witted, and effortlessly magnetic. He had met many people in business settings. None stayed in his mind the way she did. "Ashley," she turned. Hector jogged up, slightly breathless, as if afraid she'd leave before he worked up the courage. "I was wondering," he began, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't know the city well, but I heard there's a place with good seafood nearby. Would you, maybe, want to get dinner?" Ashley hesitated for half a second, not because she didn't want to, but because she'd promised herself to be cautious. Her mother's voice echoed, faintly. "Trust your steps, baby. Don't rush what doesn't feel right." But something about Hector felt steady, honest, unrehearsed. So Ashley nodded. "Yeah, dinner sounds nice." Hector's smile widened in a way she hadn't seen all day. And dinner wasn't just nice, it was unexpectedly easy. They sat across from each other in a cozy restaurant. Jazz played softly in the background, the candles flickered, the shrimp was spicy, the crab fresh, and the air carried hints of the Gulf. But the real magic was in the conversation, smooth, natural, full of laughter. At one point, Hector told a story about accidentally knocking over an entire fishing tackle display in the hardware store. And my dad just looked at me and said, "Son, maybe go work in the office today." Ashley nearly choked laughing. "You're kidding," she said, wiping tears from her eyes. "I wish I was," he replied, grinning. Ashley stared at him across the table, wondering how a man so reserved could also be this unexpectedly charming. And Hector stared back, wondering how someone could make a room feel so much brighter just by sitting in it. The check arrived. They walked outside, the warm, mobile night stretching around them. Hector paused beside her, gathering his courage. "I know this is sudden," he began, "but I'd really like to see you again, even if it means driving from Montgomery to Birmingham on weekends." Ashley felt a flutter in her chest. "Long distance, huh?" "Only if you say yes," he said softly. Ashley looked at him for a long moment. His hopeful expression, his earnestness, his vulnerability, and somewhere deep inside her, something whispered that this was the beginning of something real. So she said, "Yes." Hector's relief was palpable. "Really?" Ashley nodded. "Really." It was the simple yes that set everything else in motion. A yes that led to promises, a yes that led to a wedding, a yes that led to heartbreak, a yes that began a story Ashley now has to revisit with both courage and clarity. Because to understand how Hector broke her heart, we must understand how he once held it. Weekend highways became the backbone of Ashley and Hector's growing relationship. After that conference in Mobile, their connection strengthened quickly, not with grand gestures, but with small, steady acts that built trust 1 mile at a time. Birmingham to Montgomery wasn't a long drive, but it was long enough to test intention, and from the very beginning, Hector made it clear he intended to show up. Every Friday evening, Ashley packed an overnight bag, grabbed her planner, and hopped in her little silver sedan. She worked long hours during the week, but somehow she still had energy when it came to him. The drive from Birmingham to Montgomery became familiar. Billboards, tall pines lining the interstate, gas stations where she stopped for bottled water and fruit cups, playlists full of R&B and gospel humming through her speakers. Sometimes she'd beat Hector to their meeting spot, a small diner near the hardware store. Other times he'd arrive early, pacing outside, wiping his palms on his jeans like a man trying to disguise excitement. When she stepped out of her car, he'd always smile, a smile that looked slightly caught off guard, as if he couldn't believe she kept choosing him. On alternate weekends, Hector made the drive to Birmingham. He'd show up at Patty's house wearing a button-down shirt he ironed 3 times just to make sure he didn't embarrass himself. Patty would greet him with a hug that looked like it swallowed him whole, and she'd insist he sit at the table and eat before he did anything else. "Boy, I didn't raise a daughter who brings home hungry men," she'd joke, sliding a plate toward him. He'd blush and thank her a little too formally, which made Patty laugh even harder. Ashley would roll her eyes playfully, telling her mother to stop teasing him. But Patty loved Hector almost instantly, not because he was perfect, but because he treated her daughter with gentleness, almost reverence. Ashley had never seen a man lean in so carefully when she talked, as if every word mattered. Patty recognized that immediately. One sunny Saturday, Ashley visited Hector at Whitman Hardware for the first time. The store had been in the Whitman family for decades, wooden shelves filled with tools, nails, and old-fashioned lanterns, creaky floors, a bell that chimed whenever someone walked in, framed photos of Hector's grandfather and great-uncle behind the counter. Hector walked her through every aisle, explaining what certain tools were used for, unaware of how adorable he looked when he got excited explaining things. Ashley pretended to follow every detail, but mostly she watched the way he lit up around pieces of his past. "This store, it's kind of like another family member," he said, running a hand along an oak shelf. "I'm supposed to take it over someday." She heard the hesitation tucked almost invisibly behind the sentence. "Do you want to?" Ashley asked softly. Hector paused, weighing honesty against expectation. "I don't know," he said finally, "but I don't want to disappoint anyone." Ashley didn't press. She simply squeezed his hand, letting the silence sit gently between them. That became one of the things Hector valued most. Ashley didn't corner him with demands. She let him speak when he was ready. In exchange, Hector stepped into Ashley's vibrant Birmingham world. She invited him to a family cookout, warning him ahead of time. "My family is loud and curious, and if my cousins start roasting you, just know they don't mean anything by it." "Roasting?" Hector repeated, confused. "Oh, you'll learn," she said with a grin. The cookout took place at her uncle's large backyard. Music thumped from portable speakers. Smoke curled from the grill. Children darted through the grass with water balloons. Aunties debated recipes like it was a competition. It was controlled chaos, full of life and laughter. Hector arrived holding a store-bought dessert in both hands like a peace offering. It took less than 30 seconds for the teasing to start. One cousin nudged another. "Who's the man with the casserole? Ashley brought somebody home, y'all." Ashley groaned, embarrassed, but her smile betrayed her amusement. Surprisingly, Hector handled it well. He didn't retreat. He didn't stiffen. He simply nodded, answered questions, laughed when they laughed, and even allowed Ashley's uncle to teach him how to season ribs. Patty watched it all leaning against the porch railing. Her eyes twinkled. "He fits," she whispered to Ashley, nudging her side. Ashley didn't respond out loud, but she felt it too. In contrast, meeting Hector's parents was an entirely different experience. Hector's mother, Darlene, opened the door wearing a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. His father, Harold, shook Ashley's hand firmly but without warmth. Their home was quiet, too quiet. Conversation felt like walking on thin ice. Every topic needed gentle phrasing. They weren't rude. They weren't hostile. They were simply guarded. Patty's hug had been replaced with small nods, her cousin's teasing replaced with small talk, her uncle's laughter replaced with long pauses. But Ashley stayed gracious, complimenting Darlene's cooking, asking Harold questions about the store, finding small ways to soften the atmosphere. And, through the reserve, Hector watched her with admiration. She handled uncomfortable spaces like someone who had spent her whole life learning to read rooms quickly and adapt gracefully. That night, as they drove away, Hector reached over and took her hand. "Thank you," he murmured. "For what?" she asked. "For making today easier." Ashley squeezed his fingers gently. "We're in this together, right?" He nodded, and for the first time, he truly believed it. A year into their relationship, Hector asked Ashley to take a day trip to the Birmingham Botanical Gardens. It was spring, the flowers opening like colorful promises. Roses, camellias, tulips, dogwoods. They walked hand in hand along winding paths, past ponds where koi swam lazily, past benches where older couples sat reading or feeding birds. Ashley noticed Hector was quieter than usual, checking his watch too often, clearing his throat for no reason. At one point she said, "You okay? You're acting strange." Hector laughed nervously. "Strange good or strange bad? We'll decide after you tell me what's going on." They approached a wooden bridge arching over a small stream. The sound of trickling water filled the peaceful air. Hector stopped in the middle of the bridge, turned to face her completely, and exhaled like he had been holding his breath all day. "Ashley," he began. Her heart skipped. "I knew from the first week that you were different. You make me want to be better. You make life feel bigger than what I grew up believing it had to be." He swallowed. "You're my peace. You're my excitement. You're the person I think about when I wake up and the last voice I want to hear before I fall asleep." Ashley covered her mouth, already crying. "And if you'll let me," he said, dropping to one knee, "I want to spend my life trying to make you as happy as you make me." He opened a ring box, simple, elegant, a diamond catching the sunlight. "Ashley Green," he whispered, "will you marry me?" She nodded before her voice could catch up. "Yes," she finally cried. He stood, she threw her arms around him, and they spun slightly before stumbling into laughter. A few nearby visitors clapped softly, sharing in the moment. Ashley wiped her tears. "Call my mom," she said, breathless. "She's going to scream when she hears this." Hector smiled. "I was hoping she would," and scream she did, over the phone, then again in person, then again every time she told someone else. Patty told every neighbor within a 3-block radius that her baby girl was getting married. Their wedding took place at a church in Birmingham, a neutral location where both families could gather. The sanctuary glowed under warm chandeliers. Patty cried the moment she saw Ashley in her gown. Hector's hands shook as he tried to fix his tie, until Harold finally patted his back stiffly and said, "You'll be all right, son." The ceremony was beautiful, emotional, full of quiet moments that meant more than the scripted words. Hector rubbing Ashley's hand before saying his vows, Ashley glancing at Patty in the front row and seeing pride in her tears. The reception was a blend of two cultures, uplifting music from Ashley's side, conservative small-talk conversations from Hector's. Ashley's cousins danced in joyful circles, pulling Hector in until he loosened up and laughed his way through the steps. Darlene watched cautiously but didn't interfere. Harold joined a slow dance with Patty, surprising everyone. For a moment, everything looked possible. Ashley and Hector left the reception that night, with tin cans rattling behind the car, sparks of hope trailing behind them like confetti. Their first night as husband and wife felt like the beginning of a life built on unity. For a while, that was true. For a while, love was enough to bridge differences. For a while, they believed they could overcome anything. And before this part of their story turns toward the harder chapters, the narrator steps forward with the next engagement, speaking directly to the viewers of Stories by Mr. Flex. If you're still with me and feeling Ashley and Hector's early love story, hit like and comment, "Love Ice Work," so YouTube knows to show this to more people. Ashley and Hector, hand in hand, leaned into marriage with full hearts, unaware of how fragile things would become once life tested them in ways neither anticipated. The long drives had ended. The vows were spoken. The real journey, one that would stretch them, shake them, and reveal who they truly were, was just beginning. Marriage felt warm in the first few months. Soft mornings, shared meals, and the comfort of waking beside someone who looked at you like you were home. Ashley entered this new chapter with bright hope, believing that love, respect, and effort would carry them through anything. And Hector entered believing he finally had a life that felt like his own choosing. But as the honeymoon glow faded, Everyday life crept in, responsibilities crept in, expectations crept in, and slowly, without warning or malice, cracks began forming beneath the surface. Ashley moved into Hector's Montgomery home right after the wedding. It was a modest, clean house, neutral-colored walls, neatly arranged furniture, and not a single family picture out of place. Everything had a designated spot, and nothing ever appeared spontaneous. Ashley brought color into the house without even trying. Her books, her framed photos of cookouts and church gatherings, her throw blankets with vibrant patterns. She placed a small plant in the living room window. She hung a cheerful painting she and Patty found at a street market years ago. Hector smiled the first time he came home to see it all. "It feels warmer," he admitted. Ashley beamed. "That's the goal, but blending two lives wasn't as easy as rearranging a living room." On the first Sunday after moving in, Ashley dressed for church in Montgomery. She assumed they would attend together. Hector hesitated. "We usually go to my parents' church," he explained. "Usually?" she asked gently. "What about now that we're married?" He looked torn. He wanted to please her, but he had never imagined not attending the family church every Sunday. It had been routine since he was a child. "Let's alternate," Ashley offered. "Your church this week, mine next week." That became their compromise, but it wasn't without friction. At Ashley's church, the choir clapped and swayed, the pastor spoke with emotion, and people greeted her with familiar warmth, hugging her, asking about Patty, welcoming Hector with curious eyes. At Hector's church, everything was quieter, more formal. Ashley respected the tradition, but she felt invisible within it. People nodded politely but rarely asked questions, rarely smiled with genuine intention. She tried bringing more enthusiasm into the space. It didn't land well. Over time, the alternating Sundays felt less like compromise and more like silent rounds of cultural tug-of-war. Their first major disagreement happened when Ashley tried to hang up more of her framed photos along the hallway. Pictures of her and Patty at the gardens, her and Nia posing at a cookout, her grandmother holding her as a baby. Hector walked by and paused. "That's a lot of pictures," Ashley blinked. "Is that a problem?" "No, it's just my family never really filled the walls with personal photos. We kept things simple." Ashley crossed her arms. "I grew up with walls full of stories. I want our home to reflect both of us." Hector hesitated, sensing the tension but unsure how to ease it. He wasn't trying to erase her life. He simply didn't understand her habits yet. "Okay," he said eventually. "Let's keep them." But the pause before his agreement settled in her heart. Not deeply enough to hurt, but deeply enough to notice. At the Whitman house, Darlene prepared meals served in careful portions. Conversations were structured, polite, and always safe. Ashley tried her best to contribute, but she often felt the questions directed at her were more evaluations than genuine curiosity. "So, Ashley, how's the transition to Montgomery going?" Darlene asked one afternoon, slicing ham with precision. Ashley smiled politely. "It's been an adjustment, but we're settling in." Harold nodded. "Well, our community's quiet. People value routine. It'll grow on you." Ashley continued smiling, but she felt the subtle message. "Welcome, but stay within the boundaries we understand." At Patty's house the following weekend, the contrast was striking. Music played in the background. Relatives laughed, argued playfully, and passed plates piled high with food. Patty hugged Hector twice before he even reached the table. Hector tried to relax, but the loudness sometimes overwhelmed him. He wasn't accustomed to being pulled into group conversations or teased by uncles who had known Ashley since she was in middle school. "So, Hector," Ashley's uncle said, leaning back in his chair, "you holding up with all this Alabama heat?" Hector chuckled nervously. "Trying my best." "You'll toughen up," the uncle said, patting him a bit too hard on the back. Ashley laughed, unaware that Hector internally tensed. Neither family meant harm. But the differences were undeniable. Around this time, Whitman Hardware began feeling real pressure. A large chain store opened just 15 minutes away, offering lower prices and aggressive promotions. Customers who once greeted Harold by name were now shopping elsewhere. Every day Hector returned home carrying that weight. His father was aging. The pressure to help sustain the business fell mostly on him. Ashley tried to help. She drew up a simple budget spreadsheet one evening: rent, groceries, savings, expenses, projected needs for the hardware store. "This might help us stay organized," she said cautiously. Hector skimmed through the numbers. Why is there a line for hardware reinvestment in case the store needs support? He stiffened slightly. I don't want us treating the store like a problem. It's fine. Ashley chose her words carefully. I'm not saying it's a problem. I just think it's smart to prepare. It feels like you're saying my family can't manage their own business. I didn't say that, she replied, softening her tone. I'm saying we're married now. Your worries are my worries too. Hector ran a hand through his hair, overwhelmed by responsibility. I just don't want us living like everything is falling apart. Ashley closed the laptop slowly. We won't, but pretending everything is perfect won't help us either. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't even a disagreement. It was a revealing moment, an early signal that they handled stress very differently. The first real argument happened 3 months into their marriage. Ashley suggested hosting a small barbecue at their home, inviting her cousins, some friends from Birmingham, maybe a neighbor or two. Nothing too big, just something to bring joy into their space. Hector agreed, at first. But the moment the guests arrived and the music started, the neighborhood atmosphere shifted. People laughed loudly, the grill smoked, children played in the yard. Ashley felt at ease. It reminded her of home. Then a neighbor walked over, not rudely, but firmly. Evening, folks. Just want to remind y'all that our street is usually pretty quiet. Hope this wraps up early. Ashley apologized politely, though the comment stung. When the neighbor left, Hector rubbed the back of his neck. Maybe we should keep the music down, he suggested. Ashley frowned. It's not even loud. I know, but I don't want to upset anyone. She felt her chest tighten. We're allowed to have people over, Hector. We're not doing anything wrong. He sighed. I just want everyone to get along. Ashley lowered the music, but felt something shift inside her, a quiet ache that whispered she had to shrink apart herself to fit into a world that didn't fully welcome her. Later that night, they exchanged clipped sentences about boundaries, courtesy, and community expectations. Nothing exploded, but the air felt dense afterward, as if they had stepped into territory neither knew how to navigate. Arguments started appearing like small hairline fractures, tiny, manageable, but growing. The time Ashley forgot to return a tool to the garage, and Hector snapped without meaning to. The time Hector turned down Ashley's invitation to her cousin's birthday because he felt drained, and Ashley felt rejected. The time Ashley suggested joining a couple's Bible study group at her church, and Hector resisted because he didn't want to be expected to share personal details. The time Darlene made a harmless comment about Ashley's cooking being more seasoned than we're used to, and Hector didn't defend her fast enough. None of these moments were irreversible, but they were revealing. They showed their differences not as obstacles but as quiet barriers they didn't yet know how to climb together. Despite the tension, they had a way of finding softness again. One evening, after a long day at the hardware store, Hector walked into the kitchen to find Ashley making dinner: salmon, roasted vegetables, cornbread Patty had taught her to bake. He leaned against the doorway, watching her quietly. I'm sorry, he said finally. Ashley set down a spoon. For what? For being stressed, for taking it out on you. She exhaled. I know you're under pressure. I want to help you carry it. He stepped closer. I'm trying, Ash. I really am. She touched his cheek. I know. They kissed softly, gently, pulling each other back into warmth. For a moment it felt like the beginning again, hopeful, promising, theirs. But cracks, once formed, don't disappear on their own. They spread slowly, quietly, until one day they reveal the fault lines beneath. Ashley and Hector didn't know it yet, but life had already begun testing the stability of their foundation. And soon, another shift, something bigger, would put them under strain neither felt ready for. The next chapter of their life together would bring joy so powerful it could heal anything, and a diagnosis so devastating it could break everything. Morning sun poured into the kitchen through soft slants of light, warming the tiled floor beneath Ashley's bare feet. She stood quietly, sipping juice and listening to the hum of the fridge. Normally she would have been rushing, packing a lunch, checking emails before work, straightening the throw pillows Hector always insisted stay aligned. But this morning felt different. Her heart raced, her fingers trembled slightly, and she kept touching her stomach even though she didn't fully understand why. Something inside her felt, shifted, gentle, new. A few minutes later, Hector walked in wearing work clothes, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "Morning," he murmured, leaning over to kiss her forehead. Ashley smiled. "Morning." He reached for a mug. "You okay? You've been up early the last few days." She took a breath. "I have something to tell you." Hector froze, mug halfway to the counter. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." A slow smile crept onto her face. "Actually, I think something's very, very right." Hector blinked, trying to read her expression. Ashley reached behind her and pulled out a tiny pair of baby socks, white, folded neatly, impossibly small. She placed them gently in his palm. Hector stared at them, then at her, then back at the socks, his mouth parted in shock. "Ashley, wait, are you—" She nodded, tears filling her eyes. "We're having a baby." For a moment, Hector didn't speak. His face transformed in stages: confusion, realization, disbelief, joy. Then he laughed, a sound so full it echoed through the room. He swept her into his arms, spinning her slightly before remembering she was carrying their child. "A baby?" he repeated, breathless. "We're having a baby?" Ashley laughed and wiped her tears. "Yes, Hector, we're having a baby." He held her cheeks in his hands, forehead pressed to hers. "This is the best news I've ever received." And for a moment, a pure, unshaken moment, the cracks in their marriage dissolved. Nothing existed but hope. Hector threw himself into preparing for the baby with energy Ashley hadn't seen since their early days of dating. He researched everything: crib safety ratings, paint colors, feeding schedules, parenting books. Some nights they lay in bed window shopping online. "What about this one?" Ashley asked, pointing to a wooden crib. Hector squinted. "Looks good, but the reviews say the screws loosen over time." "Not for our baby." "Our baby," Ashley repeated softly, letting the words settle in her chest like warmth. Other nights they talked about names. They didn't decide on anything, but imagining the future felt comforting. Ashley would fall asleep to Hector's hand resting over her stomach, as if protecting a promise. A month into the pregnancy, Ashley stopped by Patty's house after work. Her mother opened the door with a smile, but something felt off. Patty looked thinner. Her skin had a pale tint. When she hugged Ashley, her arms felt less strong. "Mom, are you okay?" Ashley asked. "I'm fine, baby," Patty said lightly. "Just tired. Been a long week." Ashley frowned. Patty rarely complained. She watched her mother shuffle toward the kitchen, slower than usual, breathing just a little heavier. "Mom, sit down," Ashley said. "I'm serious," Ashley said gently but firmly. "Sit." Patty lowered herself into a chair. Ashley reached for her mother's hands. "What's going on?" For a moment Patty avoided her gaze. Then she sighed. "Doctors found something. They're running tests." Ashley stiffened. "Something like what?" Patty squeezed her fingers. "I didn't want to worry you until I knew more." "Mom, it might be nothing," Patty insisted. "But they suspect something with my pancreas." Ashley's stomach dropped. Pancreas? She knew enough to know that wasn't good. Patty tried to smile. "Baby girl, don't get ahead of things." But Ashley already felt the world tilt. Her mother had been her anchor, her foundation, her constant. The idea of something threatening that foundation was unbearable. The following week, Ashley drove Patty to the specialist, stopping at least twice along the way to calm her nerves. When they finally sat in the small consultation room, the doctor's tone told Ashley everything before the words even formed. Advanced pancreatic cancer. Not manageable without serious treatment. Ashley broke first. Tears fell before she could stop them. Patty held her, whispering soft assurances, even though she was the one receiving the diagnosis. "Mom, no, no," Ashley cried, clutching her mother's hand. Patty kissed her forehead. "We're going to take it one day at a time." But Ashley felt something crack inside her, deeper than any disagreement she'd had with Hector, deeper than any early marriage struggle. This crack reached her soul. When Ashley told Hector the news that evening, her voice shook. He listened silently, then immediately wrapped his arms around her. "We'll get through this," he murmured into her hair. "I'm here, whatever you need." Ashley sobbed against his chest. She needed that reassurance more than she could articulate. Hector held her, letting her cry until her body went limp from exhaustion. The next weekend, Hector drove to Birmingham with her. He sat in waiting rooms with Patty, held Ashley's hand during consultations, and took notes during appointments. He asked doctors questions. Ashley was too overwhelmed to form. For weeks he was present. Not perfect, but present. And Ashley held on to that presence like it was the last solid thing in her life. But as the weeks turned into months, Patty's condition worsened, and Ashley began spending more nights in Birmingham. She cooked for Patty, cleaned her house, handled her medications, and stayed with her through long nights of discomfort. Hector encouraged her in the beginning. "Your mom needs you. Go," he would say. But the distance began to weigh on him. Their home in Montgomery felt emptier. Meals turned into reheated leftovers. Nights became quiet and lonely. He tried calling her during the evenings, but her replies became shorter. "Sorry, busy. Mom is having a rough night." He missed her deeply, but he didn't know how to express loneliness without sounding selfish. One evening, they had their first real phone argument. "I feel like I never see you," Hector said quietly. "We barely talk." Ashley rubbed her forehead tiredly. "Hector, my mother is sick. I'm doing everything I can." "I know, but you're not the only one going through something." Her heart stung. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm struggling too," he said. "You're gone a lot. I don't know how to fit into your world right now." "I'm not choosing this," Ashley said, voice trembling. "I'm not choosing to be away from you. I didn't say you were choosing it," he replied, his tone strained. "I'm saying I feel like I'm losing you." She closed her eyes, feeling pulled apart. "I don't have the energy for this argument. Mom needs me. I need to rest." "Ash, good night, Hector." She hung up before either of them could make it worse. After that, conversations became polite but thin. Hector still visited Birmingham, but less frequently. He felt out of place in the house filled with Ashley's relatives and Patty's care equipment. Ashley didn't blame him. She barely recognized herself. She lived in a fog of fear, fatigue, and love wrapped tightly around her mother's condition. Whenever she wasn't with Patty, she was on the phone with doctors. Whenever she wasn't on the phone, she was researching treatments. Whenever she wasn't researching, she was crying quietly so her mother wouldn't worry. Meanwhile, Hector's days grew heavier with the failing hardware store, employees quitting, bills piling up, and the constant pressure to keep his family calm. He felt alone. She felt overwhelmed. Neither knew how to reach for the other across the widening gap. One night, Ashley returned home briefly to pick up clothes. She found Hector sitting on the couch staring blankly at the TV. "Hey," she said softly. He looked up, expression unreadable. "Hey." She sat beside him. "You okay?" He hesitated. "I miss you." Ashley swallowed. "I know. I miss you too. Doesn't feel like it," he murmured. She closed her eyes, trying not to break. "I'm doing the best I can, Hector." "I know," he said. But his tone wasn't fully convinced. They sat in silence, inches apart but worlds away. Ashley finally rested her head on his shoulder. He didn't move away. He didn't hold her either. As Patty's illness progressed, Ashley stayed in Birmingham even more. Hector told himself he understood, until one night when she didn't answer her phone for hours. He sat alone, staring at the screen, telling himself she was just stressed, just tired. But a small voice whispered, "She doesn't need you the way you need her." That whisper began shaping his decisions, not immediately, but soon. And that emotional drift, the one he felt, the one she didn't intend, became the quiet seed of abandonment that would later influence the worst mistake he ever made. The nights in Montgomery had become unbearably quiet for Hector. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that forces a man to listen to his own thoughts, thoughts he had been trying to avoid for months. Ashley wasn't there. She was in Birmingham, sleeping in the same room where Patty now needed constant care. Every night she texted Hector updates on her mother's condition, short messages sent between medication schedules and moments of exhaustion. Hector read each one, but instead of feeling connected, he felt the distance grow wider. He didn't blame Ashley, not truly. He understood she was doing everything she could for Patty. He understood the love she had for her mother. He understood the gravity of the diagnosis. But understanding didn't erase loneliness, and loneliness, when stretched too long, begins to twist into something unrecognizable. Melanie worked at Whitman Hardware. She wasn't new. She had been there before Ashley and long before Hector married. She was one of the cashiers, organized and reliable, the kind of employee Harold trusted to handle closing shifts without supervision. Over the past few weeks, as business slowed and Harold became more stressed, Melanie had taken on more hours. That meant she crossed paths with Hector almost every day. One evening, as he counted inventory in the back room, Melanie paused at the open doorway. "You okay?" she asked, leaning against the frame. Hector didn't look up immediately. "Yeah, just tired. You look more than tired." She stepped in, folding her arms. "Everything all right at home?" The question caught him off guard. Nobody had asked him that in weeks, not with genuine concern, not with soft curiosity. He hesitated. Ashley's been staying with her mom more often. Melanie nodded slowly. "That must be hard." He shrugged, trying to downplay it. "It is what it is." Melanie tilted her head. "You don't have to pretend with me." Those 6 words landed deeper than they should have. Hector exhaled. "I just feel like I'm not part of her life right now. Like she's over there carrying the world and I'm here, alone." "She should be caring for her mother," Melanie said gently. "But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be cared for too." The statement lingered, dangerous in how reasonable it sounded. Hector didn't respond, but the crack in his emotional armor widened. The store closed late that night. As Hector locked the doors, the weight of the empty sales floor pressed on him. The aisles felt silent. His thoughts felt louder than ever. Melanie noticed him lingering. "Do you want to talk?" she asked softly. He shouldn't have said yes. He knew he shouldn't. But loneliness makes poor choices seem like relief. They sat in the break room, lights dimmed, sipping leftover coffee. Melanie listened as Hector talked about the hardware store, the financial pressure, the never-ending expectations from his parents, and the growing tension between him and Ashley. "I love her," he said, rubbing his forehead, "but I don't know how to compete with all of this." "You shouldn't have to compete," Melanie replied. "Marriage should be 2 people choosing each other every day." Hector swallowed the sharpness of those words. Was Ashley choosing him or choosing Patty? The thought was unfair, he knew that, but grief and frustration twist fairness into something murky and impulsive. Melanie reached out and touched his hand, a harmless gesture on the surface, but charged with meaning. Hector didn't pull away. That was his mistake, one he would regret for the rest of his life. There are moments in life when a person stands at a crossroads. One path leads to integrity, the other to regret. In that break room, loneliness placed its hand on Hector's shoulder and whispered the worst option in his ear. No graphic details were needed. What mattered was the betrayal, small in action, massive in consequence. It happened quickly, desperately, quietly, and the second it ended, shame flooded Hector's chest. He wiped his face with both hands, breathing hard. This shouldn't have happened," he muttered. Melanie looked down. "I know. I'm married," he said, voice breaking. "I'm married." He stood abruptly, pacing. "Ashley, she doesn't deserve this." "No," Melanie agreed. "She doesn't." The honesty struck him like a blow. Hector grabbed his keys and left without another word. The cold air outside hit him hard, but not hard enough to erase what he'd done. Driving home, he gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. "I messed up," he whispered to himself. "I messed up bad." But another voice, quieter, more poisonous, whispered back, "You're hurting too. You didn't do this alone." Shame is heavy, but guilt is clever. It searches for excuses, cracks where blame can be shared or softened. Over the next week, Hector replayed that night in his head, each time with a slightly altered narrative. "She hasn't been here. She barely calls anymore. I needed someone to talk to. She's living in Birmingham, like she's single." He didn't truly believe these things, not fully. But justification grows easier when a person feels wronged, even if the wrong is imagined. He still hadn't told Ashley. He couldn't. And that silence began shaping his decisions in ways he didn't yet understand. While Hector battled guilt, Ashley was living a different kind of exhaustion. Patty was declining fast. Hospice nurses visited daily. Ashley helped with medication, meal prep, bathing, and making sure her mother was comfortable. Nights were long. Patty woke often, needing help sitting up, needing water, needing comfort. Ashley rarely slept more than a few hours at a time. Every morning she updated Hector. "Rough night. Mom's pain increased. I'm here with her." She didn't know how distant her messages sounded anymore. She didn't know they read like updates to an acquaintance instead of a husband. She didn't realize the weight of grief had shifted her tone into something flat, protective. Nia visited often, helping however she could. The house buzzed with concern, prayers, and casseroles from church members. Everything else, marriage included, blurred into second place. One evening, while Ashley held a cool cloth to Patty's forehead, her phone buzzed. "Hector, are you coming home this weekend?" Ashley typed quickly, "I don't think so. Mom is uncomfortable and needs me." Hector called instead of texting. She answered quietly, stepping into the hallway. He didn't waste time. "Ash, when are you coming home?" "I don't know, Hector. Mom is—" "You've been gone for weeks. I'm not on vacation," she snapped softly. "I'm taking care of my dying mother." "I know that," he said, "but I can't drop everything forever either." Her voice sharpened. "Nobody asked you to drop anything." "That's what it feels like," he said, frustration spilling. "I feel like you're not even married to me anymore." Ashley closed her eyes, trying to steady her breath. "I don't have the energy for this." "So you don't have energy for us?" "That's not what I said, but that's what it feels like." Ashley shook her head. "I'm not doing this right now, Hector. Mom needs me." She hung up, and for the first time since the wedding, she didn't feel guilty about it. 2 days later, Patty's condition worsened dramatically. Her breathing slowed. Her eyes fluttered. She asked for Ashley to sit beside her. "Baby," Patty whispered, voice thin, "you've been my whole world." Ashley gripped her mother's hand. "Mom, don't talk like that." Patty smiled gently. "It's all right. I'm ready." Tears streamed down Ashley's face. "I'm not ready," she whispered. Patty squeezed her hand with surprising strength. "You're stronger than you think, and you won't walk this life alone. You'll see." Ashley laid her head on her mother's arm, sobbing quietly as Patty took her final breaths. The room grew still. Nia placed a hand on Ashley's trembling back. Everything inside Ashley broke. Hector arrived in Birmingham that evening. He hugged Ashley stiffly, not because he didn't care, but because guilt and conflict filled the space between them like invisible smoke. He didn't know how to comfort her without exposing his own wrongdoing. He didn't know how to reach her emotionally when he felt shut out. Ashley cried into his shoulder, but she could tell something in his embrace felt off. Not absent, not cruel, just distant. After a few moments, Ashley pulled away slightly, wiping her face. "Thank you for coming." "Of course," Hector said, but in his mind a dangerous thought formed. Maybe this marriage isn't working for either of us, not because of Patty, not because of grief, but because he had already crossed a line he didn't know how to erase. And instead of fighting harder for the marriage he had chosen, he began imagining an exit. In the days after Patty's passing, Ashley barely slept. She moved through the house like a shadow, helping plan the service, choosing photos for the display boards, coordinating with the pastor. Hector watched, unsure how to support her. He offered help, but she was too numb to delegate. He waited for emotional connection, but she was too broken to give any. The guilt from his betrayal gnawed at him. Every time he looked at her swollen eyes or her trembling hands, shame surged. But instead of confessing, instead of apologizing, instead of taking accountability, he convinced himself that Ashley deserved better than a man who had failed her, and twisted logic whispered, "Let her go. End it cleanly. Sign the papers. She'll be free from you." Melanie's sympathetic texts didn't help. His parents' quiet suggestions that some marriages aren't meant to last didn't help. His own self-loathing didn't help. Finally, he convinced himself that divorce was the merciful answer. Wrong. But in his grief-clouded, guilt-soaked, fear-driven mind, it felt justified. Hector stood in the Birmingham church parking lot on the day of Patty's funeral, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his hands ached. The sky was overcast, heavy with the kind of clouds that warned of rain without promising when it would fall. People moved quietly toward the entrance, Ashley's relatives in clusters, church members greeting each other in hushed tones, ushers giving directions. Hector didn't move. He sat there with the engine off, staring at the church doors, and feeling utterly foreign to the place. It wasn't that he didn't care about Patty. He did. She had welcomed him into her home, fed him, joked with him, hugged him as if he belonged. But standing beside Ashley meant confronting what he had done. It meant facing her grief while hiding his guilt. It meant showing up as a husband while secretly believing he no longer deserved the role. He rubbed his forehead, whispering under his breath, "What am I doing?" He already knew. He had made up his mind. He had packed the papers into the folder on the passenger seat. He had convinced himself this was the right thing, or at least the thing he could live with. Inside his chest, two storms collided. One was guilt, heavy, sharp, impossible to soothe. The other was justification. Thin, shaky, but persistent. Ashley's been gone for months. She barely speaks to me. Maybe she doesn't want this marriage anymore. Maybe we're both better off ending it now. He told himself these things repeatedly. With each repetition, the idea of divorce felt less impossible, less cruel, less shocking. He told himself that giving her freedom while she was grieving was actually a kindness. That lie was the one he clung to most. He hadn't planned to bring anyone with him. He certainly hadn't planned for Melanie to be in Birmingham. But the night before the funeral, he had stayed late at the store, telling himself he needed the distraction, the routine, the structure. Melanie had been scheduled to close as well. When he told her he had to head to Birmingham for the service, she responded softly, "If you need company for the drive, I don't mind going with you." He should have said no. He knew he should have, but he was tired and ashamed and afraid of being alone with his thoughts for 2 hours, so he said yes. Now Melanie sat in the back seat of his car, quiet, respectful, dressed in black. She hadn't followed him inside the church. She wasn't there to cause a scene. She simply accompanied him to the city, waiting in the car with headphones in. But her presence was wrong, and he knew it. Hector finally opened the door. He stepped out into the heavy air and walked toward the church, his footsteps echoing across the pavement. Inside, the sanctuary was already filling. Soft organ music floated through the room. Photos of Patty stood on easels, one of her laughing, one of her hugging Ashley, one of her holding a younger Ashley at a school event. Hector's throat tightened. A good woman, he thought. A woman who deserved better from me. He sat near the middle, alone, hands clasped. When Ashley entered with Nia and a few relatives, Hector felt his chest contract. She looked fragile beneath her black dress, eyes swollen, shoulders trembling under the weight of grief and pregnancy. He wanted to hold her. He wanted to comfort her. But he had already stepped too far away. Ashley glanced in his direction briefly, her gaze brushing over him without stopping. It wasn't intentional. She was simply too overwhelmed to focus. But Hector interpreted it as confirmation. She doesn't need me anymore. He didn't realize how badly she was needing him, silently, desperately, in ways she could not yet articulate. As the funeral proceeded, Hector's thoughts became increasingly chaotic. The pastor spoke warmly about Patty's kindness, her service to the community, her love for her daughter. Choir members sang hymns that made Ashley collapse into tears more than once. Hector's heart broke every time she sobbed. He wanted to get up and hold her, but guilt chained him to the pew. His mind twisted. What kind of husband comforts his wife while hiding betrayal? What kind of man stands beside her pretending to be loyal? She deserves a clean slate, with someone who doesn't carry the stain. By the time the benediction concluded, he believed divorce was the only moral option left, even though it was, in truth, the most cowardly. Harold and Darlene sat 2 rows behind him. Their expressions remained neutral, but their earlier conversations echoed in his mind. Some relationships aren't meant to last. Don't bind yourself to a life that makes you miserable. Distance this early is a warning sign. Hector swallowed those words whole until they felt like instructions instead of opinions. When the congregation walked outside for the burial, rain had begun falling lightly. Umbrellas opened. People held tissues close. Ashley walked beside Nia, hand on her stomach, face full of pain. Hector followed several steps behind, feeling as though he were watching a life he no longer belonged to. As the casket was lowered, Ashley broke down, quietly, inwardly, painfully. Nia held her. An aunt rubbed her back. A neighbor whispered comfort. Hector stood helpless. He felt like an outsider at his own wife's moment of greatest grief. Guilt screamed inside him. And guilt doesn't think logically. It makes a man choose the worst possible timing, the worst possible location, the worst possible method. Heart racing, folder tucked under his arm, Hector reached her. Ashley blinked slowly. Hector. Ash, he forced out, voice cracking. I think this is best. While carrying his child, Ashley swayed slightly. Nia grabbed her arm. Hector forced himself to look her in the eyes. I don't want us to keep hurting each other, he whispered. We've been apart for months. You left me. You're already living a different life. Ashley's world tilted. Her knees weakened. Rain hit the papers in uneven drops. Nia's voice cut in sharply. What is wrong with you? Hector stepped back, unable to withstand the raw pain in Ashley's eyes. He handed her the pen. Please, he whispered. Let's not drag this out. Ashley's hand trembled violently. Her heart broke loudly in her chest. And still, she signed, but because she had no strength left to fight another battle. When she handed the papers back, Hector exhaled in a strange mix of relief and devastation. Then he turned and walked off with his parents. Melanie stood at a distance under an umbrella. Ashley watched Hector leave, rain blurring her vision, her breath breaking in her chest. The man she once trusted with her heart walked away from her. Here, of all places, now, of all times, like this of all ways. He thought he was freeing himself. He thought he was freeing her. He had no idea this moment would be the one he'd regret for the rest of his life. The house felt too quiet. After the funeral, after the repast filled with murmurs and sympathetic touches, after the shock of signing divorce papers at her mother's graveside, Ashley returned to Patty's home with a heaviness so deep it seemed to settle into her bones. Nia drove her, refusing to let her travel alone in her condition. Rain tapped steadily on the windshield, the ride nearly silent except for the occasional sniffle Ashley couldn't hold in. When they reached the driveway, Ashley paused before getting out. This was the place where she'd grown up, the place her mother filled with laughter, warmth, and the smell of Sunday meals. Walking inside felt like stepping into a memory that hurt too much to touch. Nia noticed her hesitation and touched her arm gently. Take your time, Ash. Ashley nodded, though her throat was tight. She stepped out slowly, one hand supporting her belly, the other wiping at tears she thought had already run dry. The air carried the scent of wet clay and magnolia leaves. Inside, the house was dim, the living room lamp still left on from the morning before they rushed to the church. Nia locked the door behind them. Let's get you out of those clothes. Ashley didn't argue. She barely had the strength to breathe, let alone speak. In her mother's room, the room where Patty once braided her hair, prayed aloud every morning, and hummed songs while folding laundry, Ashley slipped out of her funeral dress. Nia helped her into soft pajamas, then pulled her hair into a loose bun. Lie down for a minute, Nia whispered. But the moment Ashley lowered herself onto the bed, her body began to shake. Quiet sobs at first, then louder ones, then sobs that stole her breath. Nia held her as though she could physically absorb some of the pain. Ashley leaned into her friend's shoulder and cried until her chest hurt, until her throat felt raw, until she wondered if the tears would ever run out. Once the wave finally passed, she sat up slowly, wiping her cheeks with trembling fingers. I don't understand how a person can break like this and still be alive, she whispered. Nia squeezed her hand. You're not broken, you're grieving, and you're exhausted, and you were blindsided. But you're still here, and you're still going to rise. Ashley nodded, though the words felt far from her reality. Later that night, after Nia drifted to sleep on the couch, Ashley wandered into the bathroom. She stared at her reflection, puffy eyes, swollen face, hair clinging to her temples. She placed both hands on the counter. Mom, she whispered, give me something, give me strength, I need it. Her voice cracked. She touched her belly. The baby moved lightly, a flutter that made her breath catch. I'm not alone, she whispered to her daughter, and I will not let today break me. I promise you that. It wasn't confidence, it wasn't certainty, but it was a vow, one she felt her mother would expect her to keep. 2 mornings later, the house phone rang. Ashley answered with a tired, hello? Mrs. Whitman? This is Mr. Thompson, your mother's attorney. Please accept my condolences again. When you're ready, I'd like to schedule the reading of your mother's will. Ashley blinked. My mother had a will? She did, and she left instructions for you to meet with me. It concerns her estate." Ashley swallowed. "Okay, I can come in." They set a time for the following afternoon. When she hung up, she stared at the phone a long moment. Estate? She had never known her mother to own more than the house, an old car, and a modest savings account. Patty worked hard, lived simply, and talked more about helping others than building wealth. Ashley assumed the meeting would be brief. She couldn't have been more wrong. The next day, Ashley drove herself downtown. Nia offered to come, but Ashley insisted she needed to handle this part alone. "Mom would want me to." Mr. Thompson's office was warm and lined with bookshelves. He greeted her politely, offering water and a comfortable seat. Ashley folded her hands over her belly. "I'm ready." He began with the basics, small items to family members, keepsakes to close friends. Ashley nodded as each detail passed. It was exactly what she expected from her mother, thoughtful, organized, intentional. Then he shifted. "And now we come to your mother's financial assets." Ashley glanced up. Mr. Thompson adjusted his glasses and began reading from a neatly printed document. Checking and savings accounts, certificates of deposit, investment portfolios, stock holdings, several parcels of land, a substantial life insurance policy payout, mineral rights for land in Texas. Ashley's eyes widened slightly at some of the terms. Mineral rights? Land in Texas? Mr. Thompson continued listing numbers that grew larger with each line. At first she thought she misheard, then she realized she hadn't. Her pulse quickened. By the time he finished, he lifted his gaze and said gently, "Your mother's estate is valued at approximately $500 million. Ashley stared at him in absolute shock. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Can you repeat that?" He nodded calmly, sliding a summary page toward her. $500 million, he repeated. "Your mother was very strategic and very careful. She left everything to you." Ashley's breath caught. Her heart hammered. "But how? She never lived like someone who—" "That was intentional," he said softly. "And there is one more thing. She left you a letter." He handed her an envelope with her name written in Patty's familiar handwriting. Ashley's vision blurred. She held the letter carefully, almost afraid to open it. "Take your time," Mr. Thompson said, stepping out of the room to give her privacy. Ashley inhaled shakily, then slid her finger beneath the seal. Inside, her mother's words reached across time. "My dearest Ashley, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer beside you. I hope you can feel me near, because I've never been more proud of you than I am right now, even in your grief. You always wondered how I managed things. The truth is, after your father passed, I received insurance money and a settlement from his accident. I didn't want that tragedy to define our lives, so I invested it quietly. Then came the land from Uncle Ray in Texas. Later, oil changed everything. But I didn't tell you because I wanted you to grow strong without depending on a number in a bank. You needed to build your character, not just your comfort. And you did. Ashley, you are capable, you are wise, and you have a heart that loves deeply. This inheritance isn't a burden, it's a foundation. Use it to build the life you deserve and to protect that grandbaby I love already. Don't let anyone who hurts you stand in the way of your purpose. You bend, but you never break. And now you have the means to rise in ways I always knew you would. I love you endlessly, Mom." Ashley finished reading, covering her mouth with her hand as tears streamed down her cheeks. But these tears were different, softer, full of gratitude, grief, wonder, and something she hadn't felt in days, strength. Her mother had left her the resources to rebuild her life, to secure her child's future, to honor her legacy. No one, not grief, not betrayal, not Hector, could take that from her. She pressed the letter to her chest, whispering through tears, "Thank you, Mom." She didn't feel alone anymore. Her mother had left her a map, a shield, and a blessing, all in one. When Mr. Thompson returned, Ashley wiped her face and sat taller. "I'm ready," she said. For the first time since the funeral, she meant it. As the meeting continued, discussing trusts, transfers, property titles, Ashley didn't collapse under the weight of the news. She embraced it. Her life had shattered at a cemetery. But here, in this quiet office, something new and steady took shape. Something powerful, something hers. As we close this emotional chapter, Here is CTA third exactly where it belongs. If this twist hits you hard, going from abandoned to heiress, drop Fate will flip IT in the comments and make sure you're subscribed, because we're only halfway through Ashley's journey. Ashley woke the next morning to early sunlight pouring through the thin curtains of Patty's old bedroom. For a moment, she lay still, listening to the quiet hum of the neighborhood, the soft ticking of the hallway clock, and the tiny flutter inside her belly that reminded her she wasn't alone. Her hands slid over the curve of her stomach, and she exhaled slowly. Yesterday had changed everything, not just the meeting at Mr. Thompson's office, not just the staggering number written in clean black ink, but the letter. Her mother's voice, her mother's belief in her. That was what stayed with her most. Ashley sat up, feeling both heavy and strangely grounded. There was grief, yes, but there was also a new steadiness, a clearer sense of direction than she'd had in months. She whispered into the stillness, "Okay, Mom, I hear you." 2 days after the will reading, Ashley returned to Mr. Thompson's office. This time, she walked with more confidence, her steps purposeful. She didn't rush pregnancy, made sure of that, but she felt firmly rooted. Inside, Mr. Thompson greeted her kindly and laid out a detailed plan. "We'll need a team," he said. "A tax specialist, an estate planner, an investment advisor. Not to overwhelm you, but this amount requires careful structure." Ashley nodded. "I want to do right by everything my mom built." "And you will," he assured her. "Let's start with the basics." They worked through the morning, setting up a trust that would secure the entire estate, assigning Ashley as full and sole beneficiary, ensuring her daughter would be provided for under every circumstance, protecting the assets from any potential claims tied to the divorce, planning routine distribution so Ashley wouldn't feel pressure to spend impulsively. Ashley listened intently, asking questions when she needed clarity. She didn't pretend to know everything, but she didn't shrink either. Grief had shaken her, but purpose steadied her. When they finished, Mr. Thompson gave a satisfied nod. "You're handling this with remarkable composure." Ashley exhaled. "I have to. My baby needs me steady, and you will be," he replied softly. Before she left, Ashley asked, "Can I keep living in Patty's house?" He smiled. "It's yours. Your mother wanted you grounded somewhere familiar. You can stay there as long as you choose." Ashley felt relief wash through her. She wasn't ready to leave the house that held so much history. Not yet. That evening, Ashley sat at Patty's old dining table, the same one where they shared meals, laughs, and late-night talks. A notebook lay open before her. The overhead light cast a warm glow across the blank page. She wrote slowly at first, "The Patricia Green Foundation. In honor of Mame, strong, loving, generous." Her throat tightened, but she continued. "Mission, support single mothers in Birmingham and across Alabama. Provide emergency grants for housing, childcare, and education. Fund pancreatic cancer research. Offer scholarships for daughters raised by single parents." She tapped her pen thoughtfully. Her mother never had a safety net. Ashley knew firsthand how hard Patty worked to make a home, to make a life. The foundation would carry that spirit forward not as charity but as empowerment. She imagined a young mother receiving her first college scholarship, a widow getting the childcare she needed to work or study, a family receiving help with medical bills, a research team uncovering treatments that could save someone else's mom. Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from gratitude. "This is for you, Mama," she whispered. The next morning, Ashley called Mr. Thompson. "I want to start a foundation," she told him. He didn't sound surprised. "I thought you might. I'll help you establish everything legally. You have the means, Ashley, and the heart." Over the next few weeks, Ashley stepped into her new purpose. Mr. Thompson connected her with a nonprofit consultant who helped her organize the foundation's structure. Ashley chose a modest office space downtown. Nothing flashy, nothing excessive. She hired 2 experienced women from Birmingham's nonprofit community, both of whom shared personal stories about being raised by single mothers. Within a month, the Patricia Green Scholarship Fund opened applications. A small grant program launched for single mothers needing help with temporary housing. Plans were drawn for a support center offering mentorship programs, life skills workshops, and financial literacy coaching. and when a local organization reached out asking if the foundation would co-sponsor a fundraiser for pancreatic cancer research, Ashley immediately said yes. The work filled her days with meaning, something to anchor her as she navigated the grief that came in waves. Each project reminded her that Patty's love didn't end at the grave. It lived on in every life touched by this mission. Despite her new responsibilities, Ashley didn't lose track of her own health. She built a gentle routine grounded in healing and preparation for motherhood. She woke early each morning to walk through her old neighborhood quiet streets lined with porches and pecan trees. Neighbors waved when they saw her, offering smiles and encouragement. "You're glowing, baby," one older woman told her. Ashley laughed softly. A few months ago she felt anything but glowing, but now maybe she was starting to shine again. Ashley attended all her prenatal checkups at the Birmingham Women's Clinic. Nurses greeted her warmly, remembering Patty from her earlier visits. Each time she heard the baby's heartbeat, a fast, fluttering rhythm, she felt a renewed sense of peace. Ashley kept a journal on her bedside table. Some entries were letters to her mother. Others were for little Liz promises, reflections, prayers. She wrote about strength, boundaries, forgiveness, and love. She wrote about rebuilding. She wrote about hope. Whenever she felt a kick, Ashley gently touched her stomach. "You're going to have such a good life," she whispered. "And your grandmother is watching over us." It wasn't lost on her that she was raising her daughter in the same home where she'd been raised. That alone felt like a small miracle. Every day, Ashley grew steadier. She stayed busy, but not to avoid her grief. She moved intentionally, understanding that healing wasn't about forgetting her mother or erasing pain. It was about building on Patty's teachings. She ate meals at the same kitchen table where Patty once reminded her, "You don't need to shout to be strong, Ashley. Quiet strength carries further." And somehow, Ashley felt that strength now, even through the loneliness, even through the lingering hurt, even through the memory of Hector's face as he shoved papers at her during her moment of deepest loss. Her rise wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't revenge-driven. It was rooted in purpose, guided by love, sustained by her mother's legacy. People around town had begun whispering about her newfound wealth, whispers she tried to ignore. Some expected she'd move into a mansion or buy a fleet of cars. Instead, Ashley stayed exactly where she was, Patty's warm, modest home. She fixed what needed fixing, updated the plumbing, patched the roof, replaced old appliances. But the essence remained untouched. This house wasn't just property. It was memory. It was identity. It was the blueprint of her resilience. Ashley didn't need marble floors or chandeliers. She needed grounding, and Patty's home gave her that. The baby bump grew rounder, her steps slower, her nights filled with dreams of tiny hands gripping hers. Ashley often found herself resting on the living room couch at dusk, rubbing her belly while sunlight faded to gold. She didn't know exactly what life would look like once the baby arrived. But for the first time since her world shattered, she felt ready to find out. Not because she had millions, not because she had escaped heartbreak, but because she was rebuilding from a place of clarity, purpose, and self-respect. Patty had prepared her for this moment without Ashley realizing it. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was crafting a future. Ashley closed her journal one night and whispered, "We're going to be okay, Liz, I promise." And for the first time since signing those papers at the graveside, she truly believed it, just strangely exposed, as if the quiet city had suddenly turned its eyes toward him. He parked his truck outside the hardware store early Monday morning. The sign still squeaked in the breeze. The parking lot was half full, but the usual neighborly nods he expected never came. A few customers glanced his way, then quickly looked off. One woman he'd known for years walked past him without the usual good morning, Hector. It threw him off. Inside the store, the bell chimed as he entered. The sound echoed louder than normal, almost accusing. The aisles were neat, the lights warm, but the space felt hollow. Jerry from the back counter muttered a quiet hello, nothing more. Hector expected casual small talk. Instead, Jerry barely met his eyes. He tried to shake it off, convincing himself it was leftover tension from the funeral. People get awkward around tragedy, he told himself. But this wasn't awkwardness. This was judgment. Wednesday evening, Hector walked into the church his family had attended since he was a child. He didn't want to go, but his father insisted. "People need to see we're standing firm," Mr. Whitman said. But when they arrived, Hector immediately sensed something was off. Members who usually greeted the Whitmans warmly now offered only stiff nods. A few avoided them entirely. His father frowned but said nothing. His mother's smile looked strained, almost brittle. During the service, the pastor spoke about compassion and honoring loved ones. Hector sat there, fighting the tight feeling in his chest as the sermon landed harder than he expected. On the way out, two older women whispered loudly, "Can you imagine handing papers during a burial? With a baby on the way, too." He felt heat rising under his collar. He wanted to say something, anything, to justify himself, but no words came. His parents remained silent the whole drive home. That silence spoke louder than any lecture they could have given. Over the next week, the hardware store felt emptier. Regular customers who once bought supplies for home projects started going elsewhere. Online orders slowed. Even contractors stopped calling. Hector tried to convince himself it was temporary, maybe seasonal, but the truth was clearer than he wanted to admit. News had traveled. Stories had grown. People didn't need to know every detail. They just knew what they saw: a man shoving divorce papers at a grieving pregnant wife during her mother's burial. Even if no one knew the full story, the image alone was enough. His father stopped by one afternoon, walking the aisles slowly. "We've lost nearly a third of our regulars this week," he said quietly, tapping a stack of unsold lumber. Hector swallowed. "It'll pick up." His father gave him a look that wasn't angry, just disappointed. "You've always been a good worker, son. But this was a blow to our name." Those words stung deeper than anything. At the Whitman house, his mother spent long evenings pacing the kitchen. She'd start sentences with, "I just don't understand," but never finish them. His father flipped through bills at the dining table. "Store's hurting. We can't afford bad publicity, Hector. It's complicated," Hector muttered. "Complicated for you," his father snapped quietly. "For us, it's shame." Hector walked away before the lecture could continue. He didn't want to hear how he failed on again. He sat in his truck in the driveway that night, staring through the windshield, replaying the graveside moment again and again. He told himself he hadn't meant to hurt Ashley, that he was acting under pressure, overwhelmed, desperate. But he couldn't shake the image of her face, rain on her cheeks, heartbreak in her eyes, her hands trembling as she signed. Every excuse he'd been using crumbled a little more each time he replayed it. It happened on a quiet Thursday. Hector was stocking shelves when he overheard two customers near the gardening section. "Did you hear about that young woman in Birmingham? The one who inherited nearly half a billion? Half a billion? You sure?" "That's what I heard. Her mother planned everything." Hector froze mid-step, a box cutter in hand. Half a billion? Who in Birmingham had that kind of money? By lunchtime, 3 more people mentioned the mysterious heiress. He heard pieces of the story. Texas land, old investments, decades of growth. Everyone was fascinated. He tried not to think about Ashley. It didn't make sense. Patty worked hard her whole life. She wasn't wealthy, at least not visibly, but the rumors kept swirling. That evening he drove home restless. He ate nothing. He paced the living room. He opened his phone, then closed it, then opened it again. Finally he typed into the search bar, "Birmingham heir mother funeral inheritance young woman Alabama news." Dozens of articles popped up. He scrolled and scrolled. Then he froze. Right in front of him was a headline: "Local Birmingham woman inherits estimated $500 million after mother's passing." No names in the headline. No picture in the preview. His heart thumped. He clicked. The article loaded. The photo at the top was Patty. Hector's vision blurred for a moment. He scrolled further. A smaller picture appeared next. Ashley, not heavily pregnant but still unmistakably her, standing beside Patty during a community event from years ago. His legs nearly gave out. He grabbed the edge of the kitchen counter to steady himself. His breath grew uneven. It wasn't a rumor. It wasn't gossip. It wasn't some anonymous heiress. It was Ashley. He clicked on the article so fast his hands shook. The details spilled out. Land holdings across Texas. A dormant oil lease revived by a new company. Investments Patty had made quietly over 3 decades. The updated valuation, the legal transfer to her only daughter. Hector felt dizzy. He whispered, "No, no, as if saying it out loud could undo the truth. But the truth stared back at him in bold lettering. He read the article again, and again, and again. By the fifth read-through, panic took over. He paced the kitchen, one hand gripping his hair, the other clenched at his side. He replayed every moment of the last year, complaining about her being gone too much, assuming the worst instead of supporting her, letting loneliness push him into Melanie's arms. The phone fights, the coldness, the funeral, the papers. He remembered Ashley's face that day, grief layered over grief. He remembered walking away feeling free. Now he felt nothing close to free. He felt exposed, foolish, ashamed, terrified. "What have I done?" he whispered into the kitchen air. He sank into a chair, head in his hands. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. His mind didn't go to the money first. It went to the moment Ashley whispered something to her belly that day. He hadn't heard the words then, but now he imagined she had whispered something about surviving without him, and she had, spectacularly. Hours later, when the house was dark and still, Hector sat alone in the living room. The glow from his phone illuminated the disbelief on his face. He scrolled through comment, sections of articles he shouldn't have read, but couldn't stop himself from reading. One person wrote, "Whoever left her must feel sick right now." Another, "Life has a way of flipping things." Another, "Praying she finds peace." Money can't fix everything, but heartbreak like that? No woman deserves it. And then the comment that felt like a punch to the chest. Her ex-husband handed her divorce papers at a burial. Cold. Hector dropped the phone onto the couch and stared at nothing. He whispered, "I ruined everything." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't exaggerated. It wasn't a moment of self-pity. It was honest. For the first time, he ruined everything, and there was no taking it back. His parents noticed the shift in him. He barely spoke. He barely slept. He barely ate. One evening his mother said gently, "Hector, dear, we heard the news." She gave him a long look. "Son, everyone knows." He swallowed hard. His father added, "Montgomery is small." Word spreads fast. His mother sat beside him, her hand hovering over his shoulder before finally resting there. "I wish you hadn't made that choice during the burial." He didn't defend himself. He didn't try to explain. He didn't have the strength. His father looked at him with something between pity and disappointment. "What's done is done, but you'll have to live with it." Hector nodded, slow, defeated. He already was. Later that night, Hector stepped onto the porch. The Alabama air was warm, the sky clear. Crickets hummed in the distance, but he didn't hear them. He stared at the quiet street and said to himself, "She's going to have a life without me, a better one, a safer one." His voice cracked. "And I'm the one who walked away. Only now, after everything, did he finally see Ashley clearly, the way she deserved to be seen. And for the first time since he pushed those papers into her hands, regret clawed at him so fiercely he couldn't breathe. He leaned against the porch post, gripping it for balance. This was the moment he realized something irreversible. Ashley wasn't the one who lost. He was. And he had no one to blame but himself. Hector didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall as the clock shifted from night to early morning. His mind replayed everything he read, every article, every comment, every confirmation that Ashley was now one of the wealthiest women in Alabama, and he had walked away from her. No, he had pushed her away. By sunrise, his heart felt like a stone pressing against his chest. He couldn't stay still. He paced the room until he finally grabbed his keys and left the house, driving without thinking, ending up outside Melanie's apartment complex. He hadn't planned a conversation. He hadn't rehearsed a speech. He simply felt the need to confess something, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of panic, maybe because Melanie was the only person who knew his weak moments in the last year. He texted her, "Need to talk." 2 minutes passed, then 5, then 10. Finally, Melanie responded, "Fine, come up." Melanie opened the door wearing an oversized t-shirt and irritation on her face. She didn't look pleased to see him. "You came early," she said flatly. "Couldn't sleep." She stepped aside. He entered. The apartment was cluttered, with laundry, work shoes, and half-empty snack bags. It wasn't a cozy space, but Hector barely noticed. He stood in the living room, hands in his pockets, heart pounding. Melanie crossed her arms. "So what's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." Her eyes narrowed. "What about her?" She inherited something. Hector shook his head. No, it's big. Melanie frowned. How big? He swallowed hard. 500 million. The room went silent. Melanie blinked twice. 500 what? Million, he repeated, barely able to form the word. She laughed once, sharp, disbelieving. That's not funny. I'm not joking. Melanie stared at him, waiting for him to crack a smile or say he exaggerated. When he didn't, her expression shifted into something sharp, almost cutting. You're serious? Yes. Another silence, but not the heavy one from earlier. This one crackled with anger. Melanie took 3 slow steps toward him, her voice low and biting. You mean to tell me you left your pregnant wife, humiliated her at her mother's burial, and the woman is now worth $500 million? Hector winced. Hearing it out loud made it worse. He tried to explain. I didn't know. That's the point, she snapped. You didn't know because you never asked. You never cared. You were so wrapped up in yourself that you didn't even notice what she was going through. His jaw tightened. I made mistakes, okay? I was under pressure. Oh, please, she cut in. Everyone's under pressure. Not everyone hands papers to a grieving wife while her baby is kicking inside her. Hector felt his stomach drop. Melanie, no, she said, her voice rising. You dragged me into this thinking you were some poor, neglected husband, but you left out the part where your wife was taking care of her dying mother. You left out the part where she was pregnant. You left out the part where you basically chose the worst moment in the world to walk away. Her words hit him, one after another, like strikes he couldn't dodge. He whispered, I thought you understood. She laughed bitterly. I understood what you told me. Now I'm seeing what you left out. Melanie paced the room, hands shaking in disbelief. A $500 million heiress, she muttered. And you left her. You betrayed her. You embarrassed her. You didn't just break the bridge, Hector. You set fire to it in public. He didn't speak. She continued, voice cracking with frustration. You know what's worse? I let myself get caught up in your mess because I thought you were a decent man going through a rough time. But you weren't honest. Not with her, not with me, and definitely not with yourself. He whispered, I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Melanie stopped walking and looked at him with brutal honesty. You hurt everyone. Her words echoed through the room. You hurt Ashley. You hurt that baby. You hurt your parents' reputation. You hurt your own name. And you hurt me. He blinked at that. I hurt you. Of course you did, she snapped. I thought maybe we had something real, something new. But I see now, you weren't running to me. You were running from your responsibilities. He dropped his gaze. He couldn't deny it. Melanie shook her head slowly. I can't do this. Not with someone who breaks people and then acts surprised when the pieces don't look pretty. She pointed toward the door. I think you should go. Hector's chest tightened. Melanie, wait. No, she interrupted. I'm done being part of this story. You need to face what you did. Alone. He stepped forward, desperate. Melanie, please. Don't make this harder, she said, voice calmer now but firm. This isn't about the money. This is about character, and you showed me who you are. He froze. Melanie's eyes softened just a little, not with affection but with resolve. Go fix yourself, Hector, because you're not the victim here. Not even close. With that, she turned away and walked into her bedroom. The door clicked shut, and Hector stood in the middle of the living room, feeling the full weight of his failures pressing down on him. He left the apartment slowly, each step heavy. The affair was over, not with dramatic shouting, not with tears, just a quiet, blunt ending that made him see himself with clarity he couldn't hide from. Back home, Hector didn't go inside immediately. He sat in his truck, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. The sun had fully risen, but the world outside felt dim. He whispered to himself, almost afraid of the truth. I lost everything, not just Ashley, not just his reputation, not just the foundation of his marriage. Now Melanie too, and any sense of who he thought he was. He finally went inside the house, but the rooms felt unfamiliar. He walked through them slowly, past family photos, past old furniture, past memories that no longer comforted him. In his room, he opened a drawer and pulled out an old photo album. Patty had given them a collection of pictures when he and Ashley married, smiles, cookouts, family dinners, church services. He flipped through page after page until he found a picture of Ashley laughing, leaning into him with pure joy on her face. His chest tightened painfully. He touched the edge of the photo. "I really did ruin everything," he whispered. That night he didn't bother turning off the living room lamp. He sat on the couch with photos scattered around him. Ashley's face at different ages, moments he'd forgotten, memories he took for granted. The house was silent, his phone buzzing occasionally from store emails he ignored. He felt the loneliness settle deep into his bones. 2 days later, a customer entered the store and whispered to another near the register. Hector heard it from across the aisle. Something in him collapsed inward. Ashley wasn't struggling. She wasn't asking for help. She was thriving, building a legacy, creating something meaningful, preparing to bring their child into a life of security and love. Without him, the truth, the one he'd been avoiding, finally broke through. She didn't need him, and she never would again. Hector sank onto a stool behind the counter, staring blankly at the shelves. For the first time in his life, he saw himself clearly, not as misunderstood, not as pressured, not as unlucky, but as a man who made choices that led exactly to this moment. Alone, regretful, facing himself without excuses. He had lost the woman he vowed to protect. He had lost a child who would one day ask why he wasn't there. He had lost the life he thought he deserved, and all of it, every broken piece, was his doing. The morning Liz decided to arrive, Birmingham was quiet in a way that felt almost sacred. The sky outside Patty's old house glowed with a soft blue haze, the kind that made the world feel gentle even before the day began. Ashley woke just after dawn with a sharp tightening across her belly. It wasn't the flutter she'd gotten used to. This was deep, steady, unmistakable. She inhaled slowly, then another contraction rolled through her. "Nia," she whispered, reaching for her phone on the nightstand. Nia answered on the second ring, voice raspy with sleep. "You good?" "I think it's time," Ashley breathed. That woke Nia fully. "I'm on my way. Sit tight. I'll be there in 10. Ashley eased herself to the edge of the bed, gripping the wooden frame for balance. Liz kicked gently, as if reminding her she wasn't coming alone. The contractions were close but manageable, giving Ashley a sense of control she didn't expect. She whispered toward her stomach, rubbing the round curve. "Okay, little one. We're doing this?" Nia burst through the front door without knocking. "Where you at?" she called out. "Bedroom," Ashley called back, trying to breathe through another wave. Nia hurried in, hair tied back, wearing sweats and determination. "You're doing great already," she said, crouching beside her. "Let's get you to the hospital." Ashley nodded, grateful she didn't have to do this alone. Nia had been her steady place for months, firm when needed, gentle when the grief hit hardest. Patty trusted her. Ashley did too. Nia grabbed the hospital bag they'd packed weeks earlier and helped Ashley walk slowly through the house. Each step reminded Ashley of Patty, her voice, her presence, her love stitched into every corner of the home. The emotion tightened Ashley's throat, but she kept moving. "You ready?" Nia asked as she opened the car door. Ashley gripped the frame. "Ready as I'll ever be." At the hospital, nurses greeted Ashley with warm smiles and calm professionalism. She was taken into a delivery room flooded with soft morning light. Machines beeped steadily, but nothing felt overwhelming. Not today. Liz was ready. Hours passed. Some contractions made Ashley grip the rail with everything she had. Others left her breathless, leaning into Nia's shoulder while she whispered encouragements. "You're stronger than you think," Nia said. "You've been strong all year. You were made for this," Ashley cried once, not from pain, but from the sudden, overwhelming realization that Patty wasn't here physically. "She should be holding my hand," Ashley whispered through tears. Nia smoothed her hair gently. "She is, baby, just in another way." Those words anchored Ashley long enough to push through the next wave. As labor intensified, she focused on Liz, on the tiny heartbeat she'd heard at every appointment, on the kicks that had kept her smiling when the nights felt too long. She thought about the foundation, the future, the legacy Patty left behind that Liz would inherit with grace. By evening, when the final push came, Ashley felt a strength she didn't recognize, a strength that felt ancestral, a strength that felt like Patty, And then, a cry. Strong, clear, new. Ashley's breath caught. Tears filled her eyes immediately. The doctor placed a small, warm, wriggling baby girl on her chest. "Welcome to the world, little Liz," Ashley whispered, voice trembling with joy. Liz settled against her like she'd been waiting for this moment her whole life. Ashley couldn't stop staring at her daughter. Liz had a head full of soft curls, a tiny button nose, and the most delicate fingers Ashley had ever seen. She kept touching her, counting her fingers and toes, whispering promises only a mother could understand. "I'll protect you," Ashley murmured. "I'll give you everything I didn't have. You'll never doubt my love." Nia stood back, watching with a proud smile. "She's perfect." Ashley nodded, overwhelmed. "She feels like a new beginning." Family arrived in waves, cousins, church friends, neighbors who practically helped raise Ashley. They came with balloons, prayers, tears, and laughter. Everyone wanted to hold Liz, but Ashley kept her close, reluctant to let go even for a moment. One older church member said, "Patty would be dancing in heaven right now, seeing this little blessing." Ashley smiled through tears. She's already watching over her. In those first hours, Liz brought light to every corner of the room, light Ashley didn't realize she'd been craving so deeply. For the first time in months, hope felt tangible. While Birmingham celebrated, Montgomery did not. Hector was in the back of the hardware store fixing a shelf bracket when his father walked in with a newspaper tucked under his arm. His father didn't say hello. He simply placed the paper on the counter. "You should see this," he said quietly. Hector wiped his hands and picked it up. There on the local announcements page, Ashley Green welcomes daughter, Elizabeth Liz Green, born yesterday in Birmingham. His breath left him. He stared at the words until they blurred. His father spoke softly. "She had the baby, and you weren't there." Hector felt the weight of that truth land like a blow to the chest. His knees nearly buckled. He whispered, "I missed my daughter's birth." His father didn't respond. He didn't need to. Hector sank onto a stool. His mind raced, not with excuses this time, but with pure regret. That should have been me holding her hand. That should have been me welcoming her into the world. He felt cold, empty, disgraced. He had done this. He had removed himself from the story of his own child's life. Hector closed the store early. He drove home without turning on the radio. He entered the house quietly and sat at the kitchen table with the lights off. For hours, he sat there with his head in his hands. One sentence kept circling in his mind. "Do I even deserve to show up now?" Part of him said no. Part of him said he'd forfeited that right when he walked away from Ashley's pain. Part of him said Liz deserved better than a father who caused so much damage, but another part, the part that still recognized the responsibility of fatherhood, spoke louder. A child deserves to know her father tried, even if he failed before, even if he would never earn forgiveness, even if Ashley never wanted him in her world again. Liz didn't choose any of this. She didn't choose the affair. She didn't choose the funeral scene. She didn't choose the brokenness. She deserved honesty. She deserved effort. She deserved a father who showed up, even if only to prove he could be better than the man he had been. Hector whispered into the quiet house, "I have to try. Not for me, for her." It wasn't courage. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't a plea for a second chance with Ashley. It was responsibility, raw and unfamiliar, but finally clear. The next morning, Hector woke with a resolve he hadn't felt in years. His face looked older in the bathroom mirror. His eyes showed sleepless nights, regret, and the consequences of choices he couldn't undo. But beneath all that, there was a flicker of something he hadn't seen since before the affair. Conviction. He packed a small bag, grabbed his keys, and told his parents he needed to go to Birmingham. His mother looked hesitant. "Hector, are you sure she'll want to see you?" He swallowed hard. "She probably doesn't. But Liz didn't ask for any of this. I need to show up for her, even if I get turned away." His father nodded slowly. "Then go, and this time, do it with humility." Hector nodded, stepping outside, breathing in the morning air like a man preparing for a difficult reckoning. His heart pounded as he got into the truck. He wasn't going for reconciliation. He wasn't going to plead for the past. He was going because he owed his newborn daughter the truth of who he was and who he was trying to become. And with that, Hector started the drive toward Birmingham, toward Patty's house, toward the future he'd nearly thrown away. Everything was about to change. The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains of Patty's house, warming the living room where Ashley sat rocking Liz in a slow, gentle rhythm. The house felt peaceful, filled with the quiet hum of a new routine. Liz slept against her chest, tiny breaths rising and falling, her soft curls resting just under Ashley's chin. Ashley held her close, inhaling the sweetness of newborn skin. "This is our world now," she whispered, "a world she rebuilt from ashes, a world she intended to protect." In the kitchen, Nia clattered with dishes while humming under her breath. She'd stayed overnight again, making sure Ashley had help adjusting to newborn life. They'd been running on short bursts of sleep, warm meals, and the kind of love only chosen family could provide. Ashley rocked slowly, thumb brushing the back of Liz's tiny hand. The quiet felt sacred. Then, the doorbell rang. The sound sliced through the calm like a sharp blade. Ashley's heart skipped. Nia froze in the kitchen doorway, dish towel in hand. The bell rang again, longer this time. Nia's voice dropped low. "You expecting someone?" "No," Ashley whispered. Liz shifted but didn't wake. Nia set the towel down slowly, her expression tightening into something protective. "Stay here, I'll check." Nia walked to the front door with the steady confidence of someone ready to confront whatever stood on the other side. She pulled it open, just a few inches, enough to block the entry with her body. And there he was, Hector. He stood on the porch looking nothing like the man who left Ashley in the rain at the graveside. His hair was unkempt, dark circles shadowed his eyes, and he wore the kind of expression that belonged to someone who hadn't slept in days. His shoulders slumped, as though life had taken a piece out of him. Nia narrowed her eyes instantly. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. Hector swallowed hard. I need to see Ashley." "No." Nia didn't hesitate. "Absolutely not. I'm not here to cause trouble," he said, voice cracking. "You already caused enough." Nia squared her stance. "Turn around and go home." He flinched at her anger, but he didn't move. "I know I don't deserve anything. I know I made every wrong choice a man could make. But I need to see her, please." Nia's jaw tightened. "You need to leave." But he didn't step back. He didn't argue. He just stood there, broken, remorseful, small. That alone made Nia pause. Ashley appeared behind her, holding Liz close. The moment Ashley appeared in the doorway, Hector's breath caught. His eyes went straight to the baby in her arms. He stared at Liz as if he were seeing the world for the first time. Ashley met his gaze without blinking. No anger, just a calm resolve she earned through fire. Nia instinctively stepped in front of her, but Ashley gently touched her arm. "It's okay," Ashley murmured. "Let me handle it." Nia stepped aside reluctantly, crossing her arms and staying close. Hector swallowed again, harder this time. "Ashley, congratulations, she's beautiful." Ashley's voice was even. "Thank you." He looked at Liz again, and his voice trembled. Can I? He couldn't complete the sentence. Ashley adjusted Liz slightly, supporting her head. "Her name is Liz," she said softly. A tear slipped down Hector's cheek before he could hide it. His voice lowered to a broken whisper. "Liz." The name dissolved him. Hector stepped back slightly, giving her space. "I'm not here to bother you," he said quietly. "I'm not here to ask for anything for myself. I owe you an apology. A real one." Ashley didn't respond. She simply held Liz, her expression unreadable. Hector took a breath, steadying himself. "I hurt you," he began. "I hurt you in the worst moment of your life. I wasn't there for you. I wasn't patient. I wasn't kind. And then I left. I gave in to the worst parts of myself." His voice cracked. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to hear me out. But you deserved better. You deserved a partner who stood by you, not one who ran the moment life got hard." Ashley's eyes stayed locked on his, calm but firm. "And Ashley, the funeral, handing you those papers." Hector's voice broke entirely. "I hate myself for that. I replay it every night. I was wrong. Completely wrong." Nia watched from the side, arms folded but eyes softer now. Ashley let a few seconds pass before speaking. "You are right about one thing," she said quietly. "You hurt me deeply. You broke something in me I didn't know could break. But this," she looked down at Liz, "isn't about me anymore. It's about her." Hector nodded slowly, tears slipping freely now. "I'm not asking to fix us," he whispered. "I know that's gone. But I'm her father, and I want to try, whatever that looks like. I want to show up. I want to be better." Ashley took a breath and adjusted Liz again. "You can't erase what happened," she said, "and I'm not pretending everything is fine now, but Liz deserves truth, safety, and boundaries." "I agree," he said immediately. "And if you're serious about being in her life," Ashley continued, "it will be on my terms. Strict ones." Hector nodded vigorously. "Anything. I'll do anything." Ashley shifted her weight, grounding herself. "First," she said, "there is no path toward us being together again. That door is closed." He nodded, though the words hurt. "I understand." "Second," she continued, "you will only see Liz during supervised visits, with me present, until I trust your consistency." "I accept that," he whispered. "Third," she said, her voice firm, "you will never speak to me in anger again. Not a raised voice, not a harsh word, not a single moment where Liz feels tension between us." "I won't," he said, shaking his head. "Not ever again." "Fourth," she added, "you must prove you're stable, emotionally, practically. If you disappear even once, the visits stop." Hector closed his eyes briefly. "I won't disappear." "And last," Ashley said, holding Liz closer, "Liz comes first, always. Not your pride, not your guilt, not your convenience." "I know," Hector whispered, "and I want to be worthy of her." Ashley hesitated a moment, long enough to show she wasn't acting lightly. Then she stepped forward just an inch, lowering Liz slightly. "This is your daughter," she said softly. Hector let out a sound like a broken prayer. His knees nearly buckled as he leaned in. Liz stirred, blinking up at him with new eyes, unaware of the history, unaware of the pain, unaware of the complicated world she'd been born into. Hector covered his mouth with one shaking hand. She's perfect," he whispered. Ashley nodded gently. "She's innocent, and she deserves a father who rises, not collapses." Hector looked at Ashley's face, steady, strong, and nodded slowly. "I will," he said, "for her, and for the man I should have been." Ashley stepped back, signaling the moment was ending. "You can come back Sunday afternoon," she said. "1 hour. I'll be here." Hector nodded, wiping his eyes. "Thank you. You didn't have to give me this chance." Ashley didn't smile, but her expression softened. "It's not about you," she said quietly. "It's about Liz." With that, she closed the door gently. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with boundaries that protected her peace. Inside, Nia touched Ashley's shoulder. "You okay?" Ashley exhaled, kissing the top of Liz's head. "Yeah," she whispered. "For the first time, I really think I am." On the other side of the door, Hector walked down the steps with slow, unsteady breaths. He didn't feel victorious. He didn't feel redeemed. He felt humbled, deeply. And for once, humility felt like the only honest way to begin again. As a father, not as a husband, not as a man seeking approval, just a father trying to learn how to show up. Time moved differently after Liz's birth, slow, tender, steady. Weeks blurred into months, and Patty's old house transformed into a home filled with the soft sounds of new life. Liz's coos became the soundtrack of every morning. Her giggles lit up the quiet afternoons. Her tiny feet kicking against blankets marked the passing seasons better than any calendar. Ashley adjusted to motherhood with grace and grit. Nights were long, but mornings were full of purpose. Liz grew in her arms and under her determination. Every day, the little girl bloomed, eyes bright, curls thickening, her smile a mix of sweetness and fierce spirit. And Ashley? She bloomed too. It wasn't wealth that changed her. It was clarity. It was responsibility. It was motherhood reshaping her sense of self. The grief of losing Patty softened into memory. The sting of Hector's betrayal lost its sharpness. The days no longer rotated around hurt. They rotated around Liz, community, and purpose. Ashley lived, and she lived well. Hector didn't miss a single Sunday, not one. The first visit felt awkward, Ashley sitting on the porch swing with Liz in her arms while Hector approached, slowly, Unsure if he even had the right to smile, he held Liz carefully, as if afraid she might slip right through his fingers. He whispered to her more than he spoke, his voice a blend of awe and remorse. She never left him alone with Liz, not yet. But Hector respected every rule. Each visit he brought something small, a board book, a soft blanket, a set of tiny socks, a single rose for Ashley to place at Patty's grave. No gifts meant to impress, only things that showed effort and intention. At the park, he held Liz with both hands, shoulders tense at first. Over time, the tension eased. He learned the rhythm of her breathing. He learned the difference between her hungry fuss and her sleepy whine. The man who once claimed he felt alone in marriage now cried quietly while rocking his daughter, on park benches shaded by oak trees. Ashley watched from a careful distance, close enough to intervene, far enough to protect her heart. Some days, Hector apologized again, barely above a whisper. Some days, he just sat with Liz on his chest and said nothing, the weight of silence healing parts of him he'd ignored for years. And slowly, painfully slowly, Ashley saw something change in him. Not perfection, but effort, real, humble effort. Away from Liz's visits, Hector worked on himself, not loudly, not performatively, quietly. He attended counseling at a small center across town. The first session cracked him open. The counselor asked him a simple question: what made you believe you couldn't ask for help? Hector broke down in that chair. He talked about pride, pressure, insecurity, family expectations, all the things he'd buried until they came out in destructive ways. He joined a men's support group where he listened more than he spoke. He unpacked the grief he never acknowledged, the shame he carried, the patterns he repeated without understanding. He worked to rebuild the hardware store's reputation, fixing shelves himself, offering discounts to longtime customers, apologizing privately to those he'd snapped at during the hardest months. But the truth was, the store was barely breaking even. He didn't fight the reality. He didn't resent it. He accepted it as the consequence of choices he'd made. Redemption wasn't instant. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't a prize. It was work, daily work. While Hector rebuilt himself, Ashley soared. The Patricia Green Foundation grew faster than she imagined. The scholarship fund doubled in size. Emergency assistance programs expanded. Partnerships with hospitals strengthened. Single mothers across Birmingham wrote letters of gratitude. And the highlight of her year arrived, the foundation's first community center opening. The center was bright, accessible, warm-painted in colors that reminded her of Patty's home. It housed classrooms, a playroom, a counseling office, a resource pantry, and a small auditorium for workshops. On opening day, the mayor cut the ribbon beside Ashley. Cameras flashed. Families cheered. Liz, strapped in a stroller, squealed at the sound of clapping. Ashley stepped to the podium with calm confidence. She spoke about resilience. She spoke about love. She spoke about mothers who carried entire worlds on their backs. She spoke about losing someone and finding purpose. Not once did she mention Hector. Not once did she hint at revenge. Her story was rooted in dignity, not bitterness. The crowd applauded her not because she was wealthy, but because she was steady, compassionate, and real. And as she walked through the community center halls with Liz on her hip, she whispered, "Grandma would have loved this." Months later, the Redevelopment Board in Birmingham announced a new initiative aimed at revitalizing working-class neighborhoods. The Patricia Green Foundation was one of the anchor partners. One project in particular caught Ashley's eye, converting struggling local businesses into cooperative job hubs. It wasn't charity, it was economic strategy. And one of the businesses recommended for integration, Whitman Hardware. Ashley sat with the folder in her lap for a long moment. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She simply breathed. The irony wasn't lost on her. Hector's store, his pride, his legacy, his burden, would now rely on the foundation named after the woman who raised Ashley to be strong. But Ashley didn't use this moment for payback. She approved the project because it aligned with her mission: create jobs, support communities, build sustainable infrastructure. Not because it touched Hector's life. When the board announced the partnership publicly, journalists framed the moment as symbolic. Ashley refused interviews. "These projects aren't about individuals," she told Mr. Thompson. "They're about communities." And she meant it. Still, the whisper of poetic justice hummed beneath the surface. Hector would now work under a board chaired by the woman he discarded. But Ashley kept everything professional, brief, respectful, distant. Boundaries protect peace, and peace was something she guarded fiercely. As Liz grew into a chubby toddler with bright eyes and a laugh that filled rooms, Ashley's heart healed in layers. Sundays at the park became predictable. Hector arrived early. Liz waddled between them. Ashley sat on a blanket with snacks and picture books. They weren't a family, not in the romantic sense, not in the traditional sense. One afternoon, while Liz toddled toward a patch of clover, Hector sat beside Ashley, not too close, not presumptuous, just present. "She looks like you when she smiles," he said softly. Ashley didn't respond right away. She watched Liz pick a clover and hold it up proudly. "She looks like Patty, too," Ashley said finally. Hector nodded, emotion tightening his throat. "Thank you for letting me be here. I know I don't deserve it." Ashley looked at him with steady eyes. "It's not about deserving," she said. "It's about accountability. You're doing the work. That's what matters." He blinked, surprised by her famous. Not forgiveness, fairness. It meant more than forgiveness ever could. Late one summer evening, Ashley sat on the porch steps with Liz in her lap. Fireflies flickered across Patty's backyard. The warm breeze carried hints of jasmine from the neighbor's fence. Liz rested her head on Ashley's chest, drifting toward sleep. Ashley kissed the top of her daughter's head. "We're going to be just fine," she whispered. "Better than fine." It wasn't a declaration of triumph over Hector. It wasn't a proclamation of victory. It was a quiet truth. Healing had come from building, not breaking. Strength had grown from purpose, not payback. The best revenge was always a life lived in peace, joy, and integrity. Ashley didn't need the world to see Hector fall. She only needed Liz to rise, and she did, and she would, every day forward. If Ashley's journey taught you something about self-worth, forgiveness, and letting life handle the karma, comment "Live well, walk away" below. Like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today. And don't forget to subscribe to Stories by Mr. Flex for more powerful stories that heal, inspire, and remind you that your comeback is always bigger than your setback.